I'm amazing. I'm amazing. I'm amazing. Oh, what the hell? Oh, he killed me.
I'm getting brutally slaughtered.
No, that was an accident. No, that was an accident. That was an accident. Oh, was that a triple collapse? Get up! No! Ah! No! Get up! Get up! No! Oh! No! Why this happened to me? Oh! What did I do? It's an accident. Oh, what? What? Why? Why? What? I hate this game. I freaking hate this game. Anything. Oh, I fell. I did the water bucket thing. I did the water bucket thing.
Nice.
Don't touch it. No!
Last Pokemon left, and our full team still with us. The nerves were high, but seeing that it was a Torkoal gave us some relief.
Torkoal. I changed to the wrong guy. Hydro pump the hell out of him. Let's go!
Just like that, we defeated the champion of the Hoenn region in our first ever Pokemon Nuzlocke.
Yo! How is everyone? Wait, let's just get that in there a bit. How is everyone doing? You know, how's the life? We're watching videos today. It's gonna be chill watching a bunch of videos, and yeah, we'll watch some videos you guys sent, and then when we're done, we'll watch ones you guys sent live. So yeah.
Hello there.
What's up, yo? What's up, Ethan? What's up, Diego? What's up, Craze? What's up, Nathan? Diego's like feels good because he's God Monkey. Como están? Estoy bien, bro. Pero están. Oh. I have a crap ton of pomegranate juice on my glasses. Just lick them off your glasses. I mean, what? What up, Val? How are life? Alright, so far, all the videos you guys send me. The Legend of Horror, part 1. I think I've seen these videos like years ago. Legend of Horror, part 2. And 3 and 4 we might watch. Probably not. The Great Divide. Okay. And how an infinite hotel ran out of room. An actually interesting sounding video. Okay. Yep, every week we've been doing it, Ethan. This is the 3rd week. I'll be back in a bit. Okay. Alright, let's see why Korra sucks. Okay, supposedly. I love this song, though. Okay. Oh yeah, and Monday we're gonna start a new Pokemon thing.
Earth.
Fire.
Air.
Oh, this is amazing.
I used to reminisce about the old days of the Avatar fandom. A time of peace.
Sounds a little
Western
cringe.
TV animation was finally
Thank you,
being
yo.
shown as a potential
My IQ.
medium for good storytelling. But that all changed when the Nickelodeon executives attacked.
Oh no.
Only head writer Aaron Ehasz mastered the storytelling elements. Only by following in his footsteps could the ruthless Nick execs be stopped. But when Mike and Brian
This is
needed him
stupid.
most, he vanished.
Alright. Get to the point. Jesus Christ. How many people watched this whole intro?
3
This
years have
cringe.
passed, and Nick
Jeez!
execs replaced the good Avatar name.
These
with
reacting to
Legend
vid
of
stream are
Korra.
every Saturday, right?
At the end
Yes.
of the first season, myself and the other
Correct.
disappointed Avatar fans abandoned Korra to preserve our good memories of the original show. Leave.
Show. It sounds so funny. On Discord under info, there's the schedule, and on Twitch, the schedule is there. So, yeah. But yeah, pretty much every Saturday at this time. For at least 2 hours.
Tumblr to look
Not
after the
yet,
family.
Nathan. We have to watch all these
Some
first.
people believe that Korra was as good as or better than Avatar. And that
Wow.
the series is darker and
Wow,
therefore more
indeed.
mature.
Mature.
But I haven't lost hope.
Oh,
I
the
still
guy's
believe that
guitar.
somehow this review will return them to their senses and save the fandom.
Yo, Legend of Korra was not that bad. What?
Planning a party or something. Just tell
The
me
hell?
now, okay? Because you know I don't like surprises.
Oh, that's... What's that movie from? I've seen that movie with Will Smith. Will Smith, dog movie. Oh, I Am Legend.
I'll act surprised.
I haven't seen that in... I think I saw it years ago.
You've got to deal with it.
Oh. What the hell? This is edited and funny. Welcome back. We're watching a beautiful video. We're watching a movie together, guys. This is so stupid. That's good editing.
You got to deal with
No!
What the hell?
You get out of here! Tell me right now!
This is so weird. What the hell? Wait, when she says, I'm the Avatar, you gotta deal with it. She's like 5 years old. But it's fine, bro. What? Oh, you love this movie? Even though you haven't watched it? Monkey bien. Monkey es muy bien. Spasiba. I mean, how you say it? Gracias. Gracias. Wait, what? What just happened? I also relate to shooting the voice of a 5-year-old. I didn't know that's what this was. Is the whole video this? Spoiler alert, it's not. Okay. Jesus Christ.
With a likable, well-developed cast of intelligent kids.
What the hell was that?
Kid-friendly plot came one of the finest pieces of TV
That was
animation
so
in Western
stupid.
media. It was a testament to the power of slightly higher quality animation than usual, coupled with good writing and storytelling. I'm talking, of course, about Avatar: The Last Airbender, created by Brian Knizko and Michael DiMartino, or more simply, Bryke. But then years later came the inevitable schlock to tarnish the good Avatar name.
Oh
A true
God.
garbage mound.
We're just gonna mute that part. We don't need to see this part. Yeah, there
But
we
at
go.
least you can utterly disconnect that fucking god-awful adaptation from the original show. You can say that Bryke had nothing to do with it, and leave it at that. The Legend of Korra is an honest-to-God,
There we
dyed-in-the-wool continuation of Avatar by Bryke themselves. So no matter how horrendous, you can't really pretend it never happened. And unfortunately, Legend of Korra is an absolute travesty. It fails in every regard as a sequel, and to an even greater extent, it fails as a story.
It's not even that bad. Jesus. This is so weird. What anime is that
Compare
from?
it to another series that it directly associates itself with. That'd be completely unfair. Korra's
Right?
its own story. Even
What the hell? Hey, I don't know if I can show that on Twitch. What the hell was that?
Universal Magic System characters plot threads and timeline date from Avatar. It's really
What
a
is
good
this?
thing. Really?
Oh my
TOS.
God, you dense motherfucker.
All right, guys. I'm
Thank
making
you
a
for
pretty bold
stretch.
claim here. A lot of retards on IMDb and TV.com really liked it. So
Bro,
in
it's
other
not
words,
even
clearly
that
tantamount to
bad.
heresy. Sure, it's animation, it's visuals, and
This man is 5 minutes into the video and has said nothing of substance. Of substance? Of substance. Okay? Jesus Christ.
its sound design and soundtrack are top-notch stuff, but those are only there to facilitate the story. You can't tell a good story.
So you must
with just
stretch.
those
Thank you.
things.
I
need a
did
solid
stretch.
narrative with solid
I
characters
try
and
to
solid
stretch every
execution.
morning now.
Legend of Korra simply does not have any of that. I must confess to a bias. I love Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Bro, he literally said, Legend of Korra has nothing, but I have a bias for Atla. He's 5.5 minutes in, he has said nothing.
Great, and a masterpiece.
This is like when you write an essay and you're trying to get the word count, so you just write a bunch of bullcrap. That's him, but he's trying to get the watch time so he could get more views and more money. But you know, I always hate how the girls distraught. Yeah, right. Jesus Christ, this video. I never watched it, but did my voice just crack? I never watched this video, but I've always seen it. Like I saw it months ago as like or like a year ago or whatever. But I never clicked on it.
Piece of Western TV animation, and I'm objectively not wrong about that. But I can also recognize that it is, as with most things, flawed. Just for example,
just because no one has seen an airbender doesn't mean the Fire Nation killed them all. They probably escaped.
I know it's hard to accept.
You don't understand, Katara. The only way to get to an airbender temple is on a flying bison. And I doubt the Fire Nation has any flying bison.
Well, didn't they use those machines and the balloons and stuff? They want you to feel like he's saying relevant stuff, but he says nothing almost, yeah. And now he's criticizing Atla. I don't know if this is supposed to be a parody or not.
I knew the next Avatar would be born an air nomad. So I wiped out the air temples.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense. If you knew the next Avatar was an air nomad, and you wipe out the air temples, then don't you know that he's just gonna be reborn? Water, earth, fire, air, water, as a waterbender? So then you wipe out the waterbenders? Yeah, that actually doesn't really make sense.
Name her.
I want our daughter's name to be unique. I want it to mean something.
Destiny.
Destiny. Destiny. Destiny.
Destiny.
Destiny. Destiny.
Destiny. Destiny. Destiny. Destiny. Destiny.
Destiny.
Destiny.
Okay.
Destiny. Stop it, Uncle.
Oh, that's one of the best scenes.
Destiny. 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 Destiny.
Destiny.
Destiny. Destiny. Destiny. Destiny.
Destiny. Destiny.
Destiny. Destiny.
Destiny. Destiny. Destiny's destiny.
Jesus Christ.
Destiny.
Destiny.
I know what I want to name our baby now.
Destiny.
Hope.
Against everything I learned from the monks.
So they're saying the baby should have been named Destiny. Okay.
I can't just go around wiping out people I don't like.
Hey, but he doesn't wipe them out. He's not killing. Oh, okay, maybe. He doesn't kill any of these people. Did he even kill anyone? Did Aang kill anyone? This is like the worst critique. They didn't even get to Korra yet. Is this supposed to trigger people that watch it? I don't get it. Wait. Did Aang kill anyone? And he does kill at least one animal. Kills a buzzard wasp. Oh. Okay. This review is terrible. I think it's supposed to be funny, I think, but like... What does it say? Banging your mom last night? Yeah. Bro, how did this get 2 million views? I swear to Jesus, bro. Okay, to be fair, it does look like he kills like 10 people here. Like, like look at that. Oh, yeah. Oh, he didn't kill him there, but oh well. Okay, we know Toph doesn't die. Jesus, this is so bad. Am I gonna get copyrighted for this music, bro? Jesus. This is actually terrible. Enough indeed. Like, look at the likes and dislikes. I don't get this. I think we all can agree that 12-year-old Aang was much more mature and better than 16-year-old Korra. Okay. What's your point with that? What is that? What's... Okay. It feels like hate bait. It does. Shuriken. He's a good editor, though. He didn't kill him. What? What is this logic? This is like so stupid. Oh my god. He did kill people when he turned into water giant fish, but it was the spirit making him do it. And he still did it. Where is my mother? It's good at it. It's good at it. It's good at it. He's so short. Zutara. Indeed. What was the point of that?
So few things are perfect, but largely Avatar was cognizant of its limits and meticulous in working with or around.
I really don't understand this video. Like, half of it is insanely loud, the other half, he's talking like this. Avatar is the best.
Bumi's still
Like,
What? If he's still what?
around.
The Ember Island Players episode is a
the Ember Island play. Like, bro, I'm not making fun of this guy's voice, but I kind of am. But really, like, this makes no sense. He's short just like you. Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean he still did it? It doesn't count? What? He still did it? I don't know. How is it confirmed that he killed people even in the spirit? How's that confirmed?
The hilarious and meta example of just how self-aware the show was. Legend of Korra, however, is a humongous disservice to true Avatar fans everywhere, stripping everything that was good and virtuous about the original show for a contrived and shallow continuation in the same vein as George Lucas's Star Wars prequels. Now, I know what some of you are
it's good edits though.
Inevitably thinking, well, who are you to criticize Bright? It's their cartoon, they could do whatever the hell they wanted with it. Just because you were a fan of the original show, it doesn't entitle you to anything.
He said nothing in half this video. It doesn't count if someone is controlling your mind, but he let them control his mind. I don't know. Was it even confirmed that he killed people?
Allow me to flip the script on you. Who are you to criticize M. Night? It's his movie. He could do whatever the hell he wanted with it. Just because you were a fan of the original show, it doesn't entitle you to anything.
They just don't get you.
They've never got me, and it's getting worse. They're like, it's almost like, go away.
Congratulations. Now
you know what he said? M. Night Shyamalan. Look what he said. He didn't let him, the writer said. Oh, okay. What did I want to say? M. Night Shyamalan. Avatar European interview. Look what he says. I don't understand this. Look at the dislike. Oh, the dislike button's going away, but look at that.
But does that affect the way you move on to number 2?
Well, no. You know, the critics are... I don't know what's going on with me and the critics in the United States. I gotta tell you. Something's going on.
They just don't get you.
They've never got me, and it's getting worse. They're like...
It's getting worse.
No way. And I also think that I'm getting more... you know, influenced by other cultures more, as you can see from the movie. And so I'm not doing like a...
He says something about Europeans.
The tonalities are changing. You know, I always had a European sensibility to my movies, so the pacing is always a little bit off for them, you know, and it feels a little stilted, and they need more more electricity and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is the way I think of things, because, you know, Hitchcock and Kurosawa and Stanley Kubrick, these are...
Hey, look what this is, look what this is.
So it could be a little bit of that there's just a little bit of cultural difference, because, like, you know, I'm just like on this movie, like, I'm very used to kind of getting on a plane from the UK, so I went to Japan next, and then they're like, they're being a genius, but it gives you...
Oh my god.
And they have, through my career, I'm on 20 years now.
He says that in an interview once. The interviewer's like, oh, it wasn't well received, and he's like, well, the Europeans loved it, but Americans didn't really like the movie. And I was like, which Europeans loved that movie? He didn't even watch At La Folie? Oh.
The Last Airbender is a shining beacon of a film, above reproach, a prime example of...
Yo, he's trolling so hard. This is... What is this, a troll channel? This is so troll.
Good job, guys. I think most people, fans of Avatar and not, would agree with me that The Last Airbender movie is deserving of criticism. And that concession means that Legend of Korra is also deserving of criticism. But hey, just flinging facts
Oh my
around
god,
doesn't
this is
convince
actually
anybody, right?
so
why
irritating.
Don't I just show you what I mean by all this. We'll start at the beginning and work from there.
Okay.
Book 1, titled...
Almost halfway into this video, we finally get the first criticism that he can levy, or he will levy, against Korra.
Air. For all of the hot air...
It has to be a troll, right?
Fucking ass.
Let's do this.
She runs directly into this way, does she? That is kind of funny, but it's spinning. She thought that it would spin the other way and she could go past it, so I don't think that's a great example.
The Korra kept blowing out of her fucking ass.
Let's do this.
Legend of Korra begins with the Order of the White Lotus and the hunt for the next avatar in the Southern Water Tribe. Because Aang is super dad. Upon following up on an invitation from Tanrak and Senna, the Order finds Korra.
I'm the Avatar! You gotta deal with it!
What?
Immediately, it's evident that there's a huge schism between Legend of Korra and the original show.
Yeah, it's a different show.
Why didn't you tell us you were the Avatar? I'm the Avatar! You
gotta deal with it! Keep these respective attitudes in mind for when I later decide which of them is indicative of a huge cunt. Korra here is approximately 4 years old. Already she can bend water, earth, and fire. It's pretty safe to assume that she wasn't hard at work training as a toddler, right? So what the fuck? For comparison's sake, Aang was an airbending prodigy, having mastered the element at the ripe age of 12, the youngest airbending master in history. However, from the start, he's not shown to have mastery over any of the other elements, until he begins actively.
Well, of course. Oh, I mean, this is a decent criticism, but she could have. I don't know. Thanks for telling us the freaking episode without saying what's bad.
Training with Katara. Even then, he only has a knack for waterbending.
This is what Aqua said the other day. How was it that Korra at the age of 4 or whatever knows how to bend 3 different things? But like, I don't know. She could just know it. Doesn't mean she's a master.
And earthbending is a crapshoot. Airbending took him 6 years to master, and the other elements took him months of training to gain proficiency in, with the added pressure of having to take down Ozai before the arrival of Sozin's comet.
Mastering the elements takes years of discipline and practice. But if the world is to survive...
But who said that Korra mastered the elements? This is dumb criticism? Yeah, this whole... What's up, doctor? This whole like video is dumb so far. They're literally halfway in, nothing happened, and they're finally. This is their first criticism, which they're prolonging.
Do it by summer's end.
Yet at only a fraction of his age, and with nowhere near the amount of effort involved, Korra is already miles ahead of him in bending.
But how do you know how much effort she put? Maybe since she was 1 year old, she was like, rock, move, and she moved the rock.
I guess Aang's not really much of a prodigy after all, because it's not like Korra is a shitty Mary Sue or anything. Now, the toy relic test for determining the avatar, based off a real-life Tibetan Buddhist method, is exclusively an air nomad thing for some reason. So I guess every other nation's avatar was born as an unbelievably precocious little shit.
Now this is pod racing.
Now, 13 years later...
Wait, what? Oh, that's a cool transition, by the way, from the first episode. I don't understand that.
Little shit.
Now this.
What? Maybe White Lotus was going around. They literally explained that the White Lotus was going around looking for the next avatar. So maybe they came to the house and they're like, "How do you know it's the avatar?" And let's say Korra was only bending like water, then they could have been like, "Oh, which toy do you choose?" and figure it out, right? Like, what? She didn't even master any of them? Exactly. Until second season, bro literally didn't even watch the show. Yeah, she didn't... Well, she was really good with firebending. But, yeah, I don't know.
Now, 13 years later, Korra has mastered all the elements except...
What? Who said she mastered them? Like, what is... That's so weird. It's like saying, hey, I could play Jingle Bells on the piano. I'm pretty much a master pianist. What?
For airbending. Oh, and guitar is now Gran. I don't know if she's aged well or not.
And then you'll have your 3rd great-grandchild before quietly passing away in your sleep. Is that enough information for you?
Why is my guitar so old? Now...
That was a little weird. It sounded a little weird, but okay. Wasn't there a whole subplot of gaining mastery? That's what she was training for beginning of second season. It's possible. I don't know. I do think she was really good though. This guy said he mastered all elements when... No, he said besides air. I'm pretty sure he said besides air.
That enough. Great-grand...
Korra is now Gran. 13 years later, Korra has mastered all the elements except for airbending.
I say except for airbending.
Oh, and guitar...
And child before quiet...
Yeah, he's into 14-year-old guitar.
Guitar is so old. No.
Well, listen, if he's under 18, I guess it's fine.
It's worth noting that Korra is spiritually deficient.
I don't know.
In fact, her connection to the spirit world is entirely non-existent. The show makes a point of this once at the beginning to try and explain why it's so difficult for Korra to pick up airbending later. But it's not really because of that at all. As you will be shown, every breakthrough that Korra has in airbending has fuck all to do with spirituality. And at no point in the show does Korra connect to the spirit world of her own accord. The show never really addresses Korra's lack of spirituality throughout the season.
What?
Yes, they do. Don't they literally talk about like Tenzin like being like she tries to meditate with Tenzin and the kids, and she just like gets distracted really easily. Like it's obvious so much throughout the show that, well, he said throughout the first season. I don't remember when that happened. I'm assuming it was the first season. But it's I don't know if he'll bring this up later, but it's evident throughout the show that she's not good with her spirituality.
It's just one of the.
This is like someone on a political side hating on the other side just because it's not their side. It's like people who just love Atlan, like Korra is shit, so let's just shit on it.
Many gaping
What?
plot holes.
They talk about it so much, right? Jesus, and please control your audio when you make the video. Actually, I'm watching it though, so thank you.
Aang and Katara's son, Tenzin, shows up with his family and... Wait a minute. Is that a sky bison? Why are there more flying bison?
You're supposed to be dead.
Unless...
What?
You should really be wondering about an Appa and Momo romance.
Appa and Momo. Appa.
Yo, this is such a troll. Maybe this show is only referring to the first season and didn't realize that they just solved these things later on. It's literally setting up for a sequel, not a plot hole. Maybe this video is only referring... Yeah. Well, because it says part 1 of 4, so I guess it is, but still. They do explain why there's more bisons. I don't remember if they... This is like someone trying to sound smart, yeah. I don't remember if they explain it in the show or they explain it outside of the show, but they explained it. It was kind of BS. They just found a bunch of sky bisons or something, but I mean, it's a reason. What the hell? Did the audio just die? What happened?
Wondering about it.
What the? Does he literally put no audio? Is this supposed to be a thing? How does this video have 2 million views?
Oh no! I knew it was only a matter of time.
Oh my god. Like, what? I'm so confused.
Oh no!
Oh. He did say it on the comment. He said audio muted courtesy of SME because copyright. Okay. Why would you put it in the video? Oh, it's probably after the fact.
No homo, Momo. Well, according to the internet, Aang just so
No
happened to
homo.
stumble across an island with a whole subspecies of sky bison. And while there are no more flying lemurs, apparently, there's still a close relative called ring-tailed lemurs that, also fly. Anyway, Tenzin and his adorable family swoop in, and it's pretty clear that they're either really concerned with repopulating the airbenders or with Quiverful.
It's so good.
What's
to see
Quiverful?
all of you.
Grand.
Fire Nation kept some bison so they wouldn't go extinct or something like that? What? I've never heard that. My understanding was that Aang or someone else, like the guy said, came across a bunch of bisons. I don't think it was explained at the Fire Nation. Fire Sages, bisons. I've never heard of that. Flying bison, also known as... Some bison also live in the Fire Nation, tended to an island by the Banti. The Banti are the sages, yeah. Okay. I guess that's it. I don't remember them explaining that in the show. I do remember like they did say 1 or 2 lines about it, possibly. I don't know. I don't remember. It doesn't matter.
I've been reading all
This is
about
BS reason. Hey, what's up, man? How are ya? I wasn't sure if you were gonna come or not. You said, I thought you said you were gonna be busy for your birthday or something. So I wasn't sure if you were gonna come on stream. So, yeah. I figured if you were gonna come on stream today, then we would do it after watching videos. We'd play some Minecraft. You were doing something? How was your birthday? Let me just play happy birthday for you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Mac. Happy birthday to you. Hey, I finally did that right. He wanted me to play Minecraft for his birthday, but yeah, I don't know. I was confused. I thought you were gonna be busy and it was gonna be on Sunday. But I don't know.
Adventures. I've been done.
I don't know. If you're okay with it in an hour and a half, we could play some Minecraft. Got some videos to watch.
Trying to ask what happened to Zuko's
It was fun?
mom?
Good.
Well,
How's the trip?
Denora, it's an incredible tale.
That was good though. That was good. That they didn't tell us what happened to Zuko's mom. I thought that was funny. That's fine? It's cool? Okay, cool. Cool. It's cool? The trip? Very nice. What was the best part of the trip? Jesus Christ.
But wait, they're only dropping in to tell Korra her airbending training will be put on indefinite hold because of reasons, and that they're heading back to Republic City in the morning. Now, was there no other way for Tenzin to communicate this than to take his entire family, including his very pregnant wife?
Stop doting on me. I'm not helpless. I'm just pregnant.
And
Said no woman ever. What the? You bought Naruto figures? You're still on it. Oh, you're still on the trip? Damn. Send pictures of the Naruto figures. I have some on Discord. Send some pictures. I have some. I have a bunch of anime figures. I'd love to see yours. See if they're cooler than mine.
Halfway across the world to stay a single night at the South Pole, was the use of carrier hawks discontinued in the past 70 years? In any case, it seems like Tenzin got a hold of a copy of the script and shuttled him and his family.
But didn't he also want to visit because it's been so long since he visited?
To the South Pole for a series of really ham-fisted character introductions, and possibly to set up a conflict for Korra to illustrate just how tough and independent she is, in spite of having a vagina.
Fuck her right now.
Tenzin tells Korra that the situation in Republic City is
Such a
very
stupid
unstable
video.
and that he's needed there. So Korra comes up with a brilliant plan of going back with him.
If you can't stay here, then I'll go back to Republic City with you.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll watch too because the person that requested it isn't here, or is lurking, so I'm not sure.
It's perfect.
Absolutely not. The city is far too dangerous.
The edits are really good though.
But Korra, that spunky little hothead that she is, decides to go anyway with her polar bear dog thing. There's a nice little scene paralleling Katara and Sokka's departure with Gran Gran, and Korra says goodbye to her parents, who apparently have no issue with her fleeing the White Lotus compound, against the White Lotus's wishes.
What? Literally, Sokka and Katara, their Gran was like, yeah, go on the adventure. Like, traveling the world and possibly dying when they're kids. And Korra at least is older. It was such a dumb video. What's up, G?
Hello?
They had you went to a high-class restaurant? Jesus. They had a whole dress code? Did you get a cake? I feel like the teachers should have gotten you a cake or something. That would have been cool.
That couldn't possibly be incredibly lazy writing. And so Korra is on her merry fairy way.
What?
It presumably takes a single night to reach Republic City. But whoo boy, Republic City. It's the capital of a fifth nation called the United Republic of Nations.
Oh my God.
And put together to, you guessed it, unite the four nations. Kinda like the plan of some other guy. Just by looking at it, you can tell a lot has changed in the past 70 years. High-rise architecture, airships, cars. Remember how Avatar was set in an ancient Asiatic-like world in which some people were able to manipulate the classical elements by use of psychokinetic variants of Chinese martial arts, known as bending, and that the world around them reflected that? Well, forget that, because, Brian Knitsko really likes stuff having to do with the Prohibition. Now
I did feel like it was a bit weird, but what time was Atlas set in? I'm watching this instead of doing a school assignment that's due tomorrow. That I've had for 6-7 months. Sheesh. You might. Aw, thank you. But damn. I hope you get this stuff done. You didn't want any? They bring around meat and you had to cut off the meat you wanted. Jesus. Oh, 6 to 7 weeks. Okay, that's not as bad. 99 to 100 AG. What the hell? Yeah, but what is that? The events of the main series took place in the 2150s. What? But like in real life, if you let's see. What did people say? Aang lives to 80 because he spent 100 years in the iceberg. Yeah. We know all that. The reason we see such a jump is that we see all these new cultures form. They in turn share their knowledge and abilities. Waterbenders help build dams, firebenders electricities. Yeah, I guess. But it did feel like there was a big jump, but that's kind of how life is. If you look at 30 years ago, there was no like the internet wasn't. What are we in? 2021? 30 years ago, like look at there were no cell phones. There was like so much of the internet was not like this. Like was the internet even around? Like in very basic forms it was, right? Or you know, like things were just it was whatever.
In a kind of Asian infused.
You've done none of it so far? Jesus. You don't go back to school until Tuesday? Nice. You got a break for your birthday. We had such a big jump too. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. What's up, yes?
Hello there. 20s New York. Historical parallelism is all very well and good, but
my
why
son's
did all these
teacher
technological advancements happen so quickly? Sure, the Fire Nation had its steampunk machinery, but that all came about during a century-long war for world domination. Why has industrialization gone forward so hardcore during peacetime? 70 years ago,
what? It's literally because it's peacetime. That's why industrialization went forward quicker, no? This is so weird. Yeah, don't request videos right now. We have a couple because you didn't request on Discord. So yours will be like just request after we're done watching these. Mid-criticism, Industrial Revolution only started like 200 to 300 years ago, and we don't have magic motherfuckers to make it 90x easier. Yeah. Will you do the thing? What thing? What?
Horse was the most advanced form of personal transportation. Boston says trains were powered by earthbending. How in the fuck did cameras, telephones, and radios develop at the same time as the fucking printing press? You know, some of these took decades, even centuries, before we saw them in...
This is such an idiotic take. Jesus Christ. Does this guy not understand what happens when there's no war? Well, to be fair, like during war, there are some progression and stuff. Like America got out of the Great Depression because of World War II and machinery went forward and stuff like that. But then you look at Rome, and wasn't like the Pax Romana or something, like the peace era in Rome, didn't that result in like a bunch of stuff happening? But if you just look at our lives, the past 20, 30 years, the amount of stuff that's been going on, it's insane. And like Doctor says, they have bending. Like, Julie would have done the thing. Yeah, I don't know what the thing is. I'm not Julie. The thing! America was able to test their nuke in war. Yeah, but I don't think that matters much in terms... Well, obviously it matters, but in terms of like innovation, that helps us because it's not like anyone's really using nukes nowadays. So.
Forms like these in our own world. In our world is without magical psychokinetic powers. Elsewise, you could bet technology would have evolved very, very differently.
How are their radios? Oh my god.
It's almost like Bright just thought all of this new stuff would look cool and didn't put any more thought into it than that. Like this giant monument of Aang. I mean, I doubt Aang, Mr. Dalai Lama ripoff, would have taken a strip out of Ozai's scroll and let a giant statue of himself...
But he probably died and then they made the statue of him. That's so stupid. What? Oh my god. Hey, Dave and Buster's, that's cool. You got anything cool there? Dave and Buster's, that's where you could like play and stuff, right? Yeah, I used to go there when I was younger. Let's not mention the First Nation massive drill thing. That was pretty significant. Yeah, technologically. Or the blimps. Blimps literally came... Like, they had blimps in the sky, the Fire Nation, and they had those freaking crazy machines.
Commissioned, but hey, it sure looks neato. It doesn't have to make sense. It just needs to look cool and innovative. It's basically...
That's such a dumb...
At this point, that legend...
I want to make a reaction video to this dumb video.
Became inoperable as a story. There's no getting around that the setting has no rhyme nor reason to it, and couldn't actually work, especially on the timeline we're given. It's incongruous with the Avatar universe in too many ways, yet everything in Legend of Korra takes place here. Everything takes place in this huge bumbling mistake. Legend of Korra is fundamentally broken. You can't cover that up.
Fundamentally broken. So dumb. Do it. Make a reaction video. That's a lot of work. Maybe. What will you give me if I gift the sub? I will give you my appreciation and then arigato gozaimasu. I'm back and yeah, I'm here. Welcome back. The thing is,
From here on out, most of my complaints will just be nitpicking. Well, I'd like to think of it as pointing out really obvious in-your-fucking-face flaws, but I can't underestimate the obliviousness of some people. Haha, ignorant country bumpkin. Streets are for cars, not giant polar bear dogs. Ooh, those guys are fucking dead. After being chewed out by a vendor for not knowing that food costs money, Cora meets her first bag.
She lived her whole life isolated from society. Okay.
And I guess it just dawns on her that...
No, I don't have to see 3 more videos of this. Legend of Korra was set in a side timeline. Yeah, I think hell. We'll skip him. Well, the person who put them on the vids to react to, Kiryu-san, who came in the other day, last second. I don't see him here, so I think it's okay to skip it. I don't mind watching part 2 though, to be honest, to see how it is. Watch the entire horror. 2 of them got requested, not even all 4, but thanks for IQ pluses. Korea lived isolated because of the Red Lotus. No, Korea lived isolated because Kim Jong-un and like all that stuff that happened. I'm none-end? What is none-end? Thank you guys. My IQ. It's close to 0.
The city doesn't just hand everybody everything they want, but she's the Avatar, so she
You said
knows that this
Korea.
doesn't apply to her. Next, she sees her first equalist demonstration.
What do you mean? What?
She's
She's
the
the-
Avatar, so she knows that this doesn't apply to her.
Wait, what? I
Just
missed
hand
that.
everybody everything they want, but she's the Avatar vagabond, and I guess it just dawns on her that the city doesn't just hand everybody everything they want.
She literally knows nothing about society because she was closed off from it. Like,
But she's the Avatar, so she knows that this doesn't.
what does it
apply
have to?
her.
What does it have to do with being the Avatar?
Next, she sees her first equalist demonstration.
Are you tired of living under the tyranny of benders? Then join the Equalists!
What?
For too long, the bending elite of this city have forced non-benders to live as lower-class citizens!
Maybe they've got a point. Firebenders did cause a huge war with a devastating impact on the world. In fact, it seems like every major problem stemmed from benders. You know what? I kinda like that. A deconstruction of the Avatar setting was really the only way up as a sequel. Now, if only the new setting weren't so profoundly biased toward non-bending already. Did you see all of the technology that doesn't require any bending at all? The only truly oppressive facet of benders now is that non-benders can't be them. Of course, Korra's oblivious to everything.
What are you talking about?
But of course she's oblivious. She doesn't know what. Oh my god. He's still on episode 1. I don't know if each part is like 1 episode or if it's just part 1 of 4, so I assume it's each season.
The coolest thing
They even gave jobs to benders more.
in the world.
Oh yeah? Let me guess. You're a bender.
Yeah, I am.
I bet you just love to knock me off this platform with some water bending.
I did. Jesus, look at that guy's face. I did think that this looked bad optically for Korra, but she's not a politician, so like I don't know. It's just episode 1. What does he think? What does he think built? Who does he think built every one of those buildings?
Huh?
Bruh.
I'm seriously thinking.
Benders like this girl only use their power to oppress us.
What? I'm not oppressing anyone. You're oppressing yourself.
Didn't even make sense.
That was funny.
And as if they couldn't hammer the point that benders are oppressive any harder, enter the triple threat trial.
Thank you. Korra has a point.
You're in triple threat triad territory, and we're about to put you in the hospital.
That is kind of redundant. Triple triad.
Ones who are gonna need a hospital, and for your sake, I hope there's one nearby.
That was
They
cool.
threaten one little shopkeeper, and Korra decides to mop the street with him. Or, well, wreck the street with him. The police
Yeah, that
show
was
up and
bad.
arrest Korra because property damage is the only thing she's not allowed to get away with today.
Hey, we got a good picture.
Fatality.
Korra resists because she's the Avatar. And there's a nice little chase sequence.
Like, but the thing is, you guys saying it's episode 1, it's episode 1. The guy that made this video, he would probably be like, you see, there's so much wrong with episode 1. I made a 23-minute video on it. If I made one on every episode, it would take too long. By acting like they're being oppressed, they will in turn make themselves suppressed. Yeah, I mean, conversations like that could get more nuanced, but yeah, I don't know. This guy's takes are weird. Like, well, what's the point of this?
Of course caught. She briefly meets with Lin Bei Fong,
I don't think he'd realize that he was wrong. I don't think that's how it works for a lot of people.
Toph's daughter, and the token hard-ass lady police chief, then is
But
bailed
maybe.
out by Tenzin, and endures no other consequences for her actions. What the fuck? She's immediately taken on as Tenzin's pupil, recognized by Republic City as the great and almighty Avatar.
Yeah, because she's the Avatar.
And all's well that ends well.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Republic City.
All right, that's all the questions the... Come on. How do you want to handle this?
So, the Avatar has arrived early. It looks like we'll have to accelerate our plans.
I should have made a better face.
Man, Amon, good thing this series of events transpired in favor of your plans. I mean, if Korra
What?
was a strong, independent woman, if her airbending teacher were any less lenient with her, and if her parents gave a single iota of a shit, who knows how long it would have taken for her to get to Republic City. If Korra weren't such a massive Mary Sue and had to travel the world to master
That's such a
elements
dumb
like
video.
every other Avatar, then you'd have to wait around forever to get your hands on her. Luckily, coincidence was on your side. Okay.
I mean, okay. What?
Get ready. I'm about to say something positive about Korra. This guy is cool. Cool hood, cool mask, cool voice.
The Avatar has arrived early.
Cool ominous music. Just
He is
damn
cool.
cool. Now, don't worry. The show's going to completely
I
undermine
mean-
his character in every possible fashion. But more on that later.
Oh my god. Jesus Christ, that was terrible. Oh my god. I don't hate LOK, rather indifferent, but it's how butthurt the fans got any criticism the show gets. But it's like terrible criticism. At least have some good criticism, like how in Atla there was one big bad guy, and in this show there's 4. And that might ruin certain aspects of the show. Like, that's something interesting to talk about. But Jesus, that was so terrible. What a terrible, terrible criticism. This video is so bad on every level except the editing. The editing is nice, yeah. You thought I was a chi bender, but it was me, Dio, again. Alright, part 2, guys. Part 2 has less dislikes because everyone who watched part 1 watched part 2, but everyone who hated part 1 didn't go to part 2.
That sport is a mockery of the noble tradition of...
Oh my god, he literally just continues.
The next episode immediately introduces Probe.
This is literally episode by episode. Jesus Christ. Does he do every single episode? Oh my god. Look at that. He does 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he stops. Oh, here. Oh, you see, I watched some of it apparently before. Legend of Horror Renegade? I don't know what that means. I guess he tried to recreate his fame, and it worked. Jesus Christ, look at those views. At least for part 3. 1 million views. You'll be back later? Okay. But people think Canon Kodasumi is best ship. It was whatever. I didn't really care much about the ship. Maybe you could criticize the love story in Korra, but he didn't say anything cool. Guys, do you not understand? You send the videos throughout the week. I watch them in order from what you guys send me on Discord. And then after that... Hey, I'm not twerking. And then after that, you guys could send links in chat. Oh, wait, this looks funny. His edits are good though. What's up, Nico? Alright, we don't need to watch part 2 since he's not here.
Tenzin sums it up thusly.
That
Thank you,
sport is
Doctor.
a mockery of the noble tradition of...
Funnily enough, Amon doesn't abide by her retardation and shows
One,
up with a small
hi.
army of chi blockers. However, he doesn't...
Confused. I'm going inside.
Fucking idiot! Aang, for instance, was a sweetheart. He did whatever he...
This is so stupid. I don't want to watch it. Oh my god. This is the next video. This commentator is nitpicking. But it's not even... What's up, Aqua? It's not even good, like, points. Season 1 core had a lot of potential. Throwing politics into this war was a wise move because it shows that the side of right and wrong is not so simple anymore, especially after ending war started by benders. Sure, yeah. The execution was half-baked. Amon shouldn't have been a bender to empower the movement. Yeah, that was kind of weird to me. But, like, that was also interesting in a way. But yeah, like, those are more concrete, like, things to talk about. But what he talked about was just BS. So don't send messages on Discord. You won't have your video on the stream until later. Oh, this one. Yes. Ugh, now we have to watch The Great Divide. Great.
Monkey do bad. Monkey do very bad.
He's gonna shit all over
Avatar:
it.
The Last Airbender.
Goodbye, Jessica.
It's a show considered by many, myself included, to be one of the best pieces of animated
Dinner?
television
Aye.
of all time. Its balance of exciting...
Why do these people talk with such, I don't know, like, cockiness? Jesus Christ. Of all time. Or maybe that's how he just talks and I'm being an asshole. They don't explain how they're powerful enough to actually bloodbend without... They actually do explain that. They explain that basically they trained like hell to basically get that. Which is not the best explanation, but it is an explanation. And there were only 3 benders that could bend without a full moon. Blood bend without a full moon. From my recollection.
television of all time. Its balance of...
Well, okay. So I'll say it one more time. Basically... That's too difficult. Sheesh. You guys send me videos throughout the week. We watch all those videos. And then when we finish those videos, I take requests on Twitch chat. That's basically how it goes. Alright, guys? Anime. Wait, I thought this wasn't an anime. Time. Yeah.
Fun humor, contrasted by a focus on serious themes and deeply emotional moments, have made it one of the most well-loved shows that Nickelodeon has ever produced, with the show having an overall 9.2 rating on IMDb, a score that accounts for over 230,000 different reviews. Of course, even the best shows have their mediocre or less than satisfying episodes, and even Avatar isn't exempt from this. And some fans have come to a consensus about what the worst episode of this otherwise stellar show would be. Book 1, Chapter 11, The Great Divide. Now, in all fairness, worst may seem like a harsh word to use.
Yes, it's not the worst.
Because saying that there's a worst episode of Avatar is kind of like saying you got the smallest slice of a really good pizza. The Great Divide is kind of the same way. Hell, going back to the IMDb ratings for a second, the most damning thing you could even say about The Great Divide is that it has the lowest individual episode score, and even then...
You see, it's rated 7 out of 10. It's an amazing, amazing show. Yeah, episode. My video is good, don't worry. No worries, these videos are fine, they're good. Yeah, I love Drake and Josh. I used to watch it a lot when I was younger.
That's still a 7.0 out of 10. So why do
out of 10
fans consider this the worst episode of the series then? What makes it such a letdown in an otherwise stellar series that deserves the damn
TTS not working?
7.0 and even a joke at its expense within the show itself 2 seasons later? Let's break down The Great Divide and find out, shall we? Oh, and as always, big time heckin' spoilers ahead.
Okay. I refunded.
So the episode opens up with
Okay, we got 2 minutes in, nothing so far, but they're gonna explain it, so okay. He's just justified your point. He's basically saying Adla is solid, but The Great Divide is the worst out of series. Yeah, I still don't think it's the worst, but you know, I think it's good.
Team Avatar setting up camp.
Yeah, IQ plus.
Aang having to settle a couple of disputes among the group, convincing Sokka and Katara to switch jobs when they get into a dispute about the tent and the firewood, as well as getting Momo and Appa to stop squabbling over a melon by cutting it into fair portions for both of them. We cut to the next morning.
You see that? What a beautiful start to the episode.
As the group arrives at the namesake of this episode, the Great Divide. They plan to just fly over the whole thing.
Divide.
Which, you have a flying bison, when they're suddenly joined by a member of the Ganjin tribe, a group of refugees trying to escape the advancing Fire Nation army. It's not.
Ooh, it relates to the realities of dealing with the impending threat of the Fire Nation armies. That there are refugees that must escape
Not long before we see the arrival of the Zhang
Oh, this is
tribe,
Zelda
who
music?
are also refugees, but live a very different lifestyle than the Ganjins.
Oh, it is! It is Zelda Breath of the Wild. I just realized it.
Ganjins are neat, tidy, and carry themselves with an air of superiority, and look down upon the Zhangs as if they were nothing but animals. The Zhangs, meanwhile, are messy, rough, and boorish, and view the Ganjins as nothing but snobby, spoiled elitists, who are more worried about being prim and proper than knowing how to survive, and we're told that the Zhangs and the Ganjins, for some yet unstated reason, have been in conflict for 100 years.
That's so interesting. 100 years of conflict. Like, if you think back, like, there's decades or centuries, years of conflict between different nations, and sometimes the origin reason is not 100% understood. So this is very realistic. I miss Breath of the Wild days. So many IQ minus. Sorry, guys.
With both tribes having people who couldn't possibly make the walk on.
Oh my. The beach is not the worst episode, but I didn't accidentally rank it that way. If you watch both again back to back and compare how they contribute to the plot, you will know in your soul. Okay, but I could still prefer one over the other. And I could still find one more cringe compared to the other, regardless of whether one serves or contributes to the plot more than the other. Because an episode contributing to the plot more doesn't mean that it's a better episode in and of itself, right? Realistic, good themes, pretty good execution of... I agree with you, Diego. I agree.
Aang offers to have Appa fly the sick and elderly across, while also helping the Great Divide's Earthbender tour guide escort the two feuding tribes through the canyon on foot, and hey, just like that, we've got our lessons for the episode. The past shouldn't completely dictate the present or the future.
Ooh,
Don't just
beautiful.
look by its cover. Working together is the only way to succeed.
Look at these lessons. Amazing. You prefer one, but you gotta admit one is better. But better how? Yeah.
Boom. Themes established. Let's rock and roll.
Better in serving the plot? Sure, I could admit that. But that's not what a tier list is necessarily, right?
And it's like, yeah, those are some great lessons to teach, and in concept, it's certainly not a bad idea. Hell, it's not even the first or the last time that such themes would be explored in this show, especially about judging people based on where they come from. But it's the way that those themes are executed that ultimately ruins whatever lesson the Great Divide may be trying to teach.
Teach.
Well, I guess we learned our lesson.
Oh, look. Pre-watched? Huh. Great lesson, poor execution. Come on, Diego.
No, we didn't, dude. No, we didn't.
Now, something that's pretty crucial to a story like this, where
It is Breath of the Wild music.
both sides of a conflict have unfair, preconceived notions about the opposing side, is that at some point, at least some of those notions have to be proven false, or at least exaggerated, so it can be conveyed to the audience that, yeah, having those prejudices about people isn't the right way to go. The problem with the Great Divide is that it just never really presents the Zhangs or the Ganjins as being anything other than what the other tribe believes them to be anyway.
But that's very realistic. That's how a lot of people engage in reality, like in life. That's how people are. People don't change just because there's a lesson. Like, you can know that there's a lesson to change and that's better, but that's not how people like engage in reality.
They all just kind of
a lot of
suck
people,
as
right?
people. At no point does either tribe really learn to look past appearances and prejudices when it comes to the other tribe, at least not of their own.
So the lesson is to not be like them. Boom. Realistic isn't always good. Sure, but it's just like another point of view.
Volition, with the Zhangs believing that the Ganjins are nothing but spoiled, pompous fools, and the Ganjin tribe leader finding new and creative ways to call the Zhangs nothing but animals and thieves. It gets to the point where even Aang, who saw this as an opportunity to flex his Avatar problem-solving skills, just says, fuck it, just walk on either side of this big wall the rest of the way. But I think
because he couldn't solve it. Just like in real life, there are certain problems like you can't solve by just being true to yourself.
Biggest thing for me that makes both the Zhang and Ganjin tribes so
It's
completely
true, though.
unlikable, even more so than their one-dimensional characters, is just how blatantly selfish both tribes are. And
But that's how people are.
How that selfishness puts everyone
some
in
people are like
danger.
that.
The one rule that the Canyon Guide establishes before the trip begins is that no one's allowed to bring
Don't bring food.
with a very understandable reasoning that doing so would attract dangerous creatures known as canyon crawlers. We see both tribes hastily eating a bunch of food before the trip begins, presumably getting rid of it all, but
People
not too
aren't
far-
selfish, but that's a debatable thing. There's two lines of thought to that. There's a line of thought that people are born like selfish and stuff, and that people are born like good and stuff, or whatever, right? Like realistically, there's probably a mix, right? But there's definitely groups of people that act this way. I don't know why it's surprising to see. Like that's just how it is.
Canyon, hey, what do you
Sometimes
know?
people
It's
are
a
like that.
canyon crawler. Wonder how that got there. Team Avatar manages to chase it away, but the damage.
I don't want to watch an episode full of selfish people. It is okay. Because in your belief system, people are not selfish, then this is not realistic. Like, that's your point of view, but I disagree with that. I think some people are, some people aren't. Like, I don't think that's much of a stretch at all, really.
The Canyon Guide.
And it was interesting. Like, you could hate these characters. I think it was a well-written episode because of all of these things. Because it was like a different aspect of them. Because this guy got hurt. Because you could feel hate for these two groups that don't change their opinions and stuff. So it's like interesting. It's like well-written. People are born sus. I'm spaghetti. I'm lasagna. You even said half of people would be selfish, kind of. No, I'm saying like there's two groups of thought on that. And that there's probably a mix. Impasta sauce? Oh.
Its arms and legs being injured to the point where he can't even earthbend, presumably leaving everyone trapped in the Great Divide. And later that night, with each tribe having a separate campsite, it's revealed that both tribes brought food down into the canyon, despite the Canyon Guide's specific instructions not to.
Oh my god, people don't follow instructions. Like, that's not realistic. That's so realistic. Even if it could cause their downfall, like that's, that could have been the lesson that Aang gave. It's hard to change bad habits, but no, Aang lies. And now the real lesson of this episode. Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. It's to make the situation easier for him because he is savior, so he can do whatever he wants. Waste of time. But that's not the only part of the episode. You could say that's a bad part of the episode. But everything else was pretty good. This isn't selfishness. This is in-group bias. Anyone who argues that isn't realistic is lying to themselves. Yeah, that's. I think this is like, if you just look at politics for 1 second. Why do so many streamers say no politics in chat? They have. I don't have this because I don't care. I like talking about pretty much anything. But a lot of streamers have. Oh, don't talk about politics or no religion or whatever, because these are very passionate topics for people. And why is it very passionate? Because people are not really open to thinking about the other side in many cases, right? This is not like, this is pretty realistic. That's why I thought it was interesting. I'm starting to feel like I should make an episode, like a video on this. Jesus. But that's what's good about the episode. That, like, to me, that there are these like hateable characters, so to speak. Like, you could look at them and say, "Oh my god, how did they bring food?" And, like, to me, if something sparks your emotions, that means that, like, it did a good job in sparking your emotions. Like, if people hate an actor, like, if you look at an actor and they played a certain role of a bad guy or something, and people generally and genuinely hate that actor because of the role he played, it's like, that means he or she did a really good job in their role, right? Because they convinced you, like, that they're a terrible person or whatever. Like, that's why I think the writing in this episode was good. Hateable, but it's so, like, bland character. But I think a lot of people are like that. Not bland per se, but stuck to their own positions. And I think that's actually interesting that they brought that. They're hateable to be hateable with no reason, with no good reason. But that's like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like reading history and reading how different types of people hated each other. Like, there are groups of people who hate each other for things that their ancestors did. It's in reality. So I don't know. It's not a crazy thing to see, to be honest. Like, oh, they're so stupid. Oh, they're so one-dimensional. Well, a lot of people are like that, and it's not. I don't think it's one-dimensional per se. It's just, I just think that's how it is. I don't know. The reason is that us versus them mindset is harmful and makes the situation worse. That's a good lesson for a kids show. Yeah, but I will say, like with Aang lying, like we'll get to that. I don't want to speak before we get to that, but I'll definitely talk about it because I'm sure he will.
I understand that it's partly meant to play into the idea that both tribes were stereotyping each other as being selfish and not being able to go without food for a day, but it just comes across as well as both tribes being selfish and not being able to go without food for
But that's what they were. Like, why does it have to be such a perfect, like, but that's what it was. Like, I don't...
Look, Avatar The Last Airbender...
What's wrong with portraying both sides? Like, if anything, wouldn't it be worse if they portrayed one side as not having food and the other side actually having food, and then one side that doesn't have food is like, how could you do this? Like, I don't know, like, they were kind of equal in showing that both sides kind of cheated, you know, or were like bad and like don't follow their own morals or ideals or whatever, right? And they blame each other. Like, I thought that was interesting.
Is a show with characters who are full of flaws and shortcomings. In fact, in many cases, it's those very flaws that make them so compelling. Like, the thing that makes a flawed character so fun to watch is just how those flaws conflict with their good qualities. How the things they do right and the things they do wrong both stem from the same base character logic and line up with who they are. And hey, that's not to say...
I'm sorry, this guy's voice is... I don't know what it is. There's something about it. It's just so... like that.
Say that every character ever needs to be full to bursting with complex...
You could easily make the argument that Fire Lord Ozai was pretty simple despite being the big bad of the show, but at least for him, you were meant to root against him instead of empathize with him. Like I think the writers wanted with the Ganjins. I don't know that the writers wanted us to empathize with them at all. But like that's another point. Yeah, Fire Lord Ozai was bad, you know, and that's fine. Not everything has to be complex to be good. No, I don't know.
But
I don't know.
In a show like Avatar, where even a lot of the side characters tend to have some sort of interesting nuance to their personality or motivations, it kind of just makes these really simple, uninteresting, and annoying cardboard cutouts stick out even more. And that's ultimately what both of these tribes amount to. They're not fleshed out characters, they're just one-note, one-dimensional outlines of characters that the writers forgot to fill in with anything interesting. And I'd like...
But their hate for each other was so large that that's what was concentrated on mostly, right? That why would they concentrate on other aspects of their characters that much? They did a little bit from what I can remember, but I don't know. I think that means
I'd like to think that they knew this too, because when it came time to invade the Fire Nation on the day of Black Sun, Sokka gave his father a very specific list of people to recruit for the invasion force, and according to Hakoda, he was able to locate everyone that Sokka wanted, which means he didn't even consider the Zhangs or the Ganjins for this absolutely crucial mission. That's how you know these two tribes weren't good characters.
What? If you have two groups of people that hate each other and that could create conflict in a war with each other instead of fighting the common enemy, of course you wouldn't want to recruit them. How does that prove that they're bad characters? That logic made no sense. The argument is not, does this episode have good moments? The real debate is the Great Divide worthy of being at the top? Hey, if you watched till the end, Aqua, I didn't put it all the way at S, okay? I had to, every time I ranked a new episode, I had to compare it to all the episodes I've already ranked. I didn't leave it, I think I had it at like B or at the bottom of A at the end of the day. I have a feeling that you secretly agree, but I have too much pride. But I don't think it's an S tier. I don't think I even rated it as S tier, though. This whole episode feels immature? You mean immature. I mean... I don't know. I think a lot of aspects of Avatar are immature. It's a kid's show. Like, if you look at the cave of the secret tunnel, like half of that episode was just jokes, and like kind of dunking on the immature characters, side characters. I don't think that. I don't know. Maybe it's a good idea, but the way they do it is bad. Maybe you did rate it at the end of S tier. I might have, and you I didn't accidentally put the beach at D. But okay. I can agree with you that maybe, okay, this episode is better because of XYZ. But for me, from the tier list, it's worse because of XYZ. Like, the beach episode I really didn't like because it was very cringy to me. And that's... Like you're fighting with the emotion I felt while watching it. I'm not talking about how it furthers the plot and stuff like that. That's a different type of tier list that I guess I could have hypothetically made, you know.
When Sokka wouldn't even bring them
Maybe
on
did I rate it
board
at end of S? Okay. Compared to the other episodes, then I must have thought it was at the end of S. IQ plus.
what was the most important mission of his life up to that point, not even to act as meat shields in case the invasion went south, which, you know, if you recall...
Again, I think this is a bad point that he brings up here. Like, the two, they literally would be more... They could have been a negative asset on their team. They could have been a liability on Team Avatar, because they might have even fought against each other and not helped the team advance forward. That makes more sense as opposed to, oh, they're bad characters, that's why they weren't written into this part of the show. It's not just about furthering the plot. A lot of filler is amazing, but Great Divide is just so bad. Okay, tell me why it's bad. You already told me, but so far the only credible thing that you guys say for why it's bad that makes sense to me is Aang lying, but we'll get to that.
It totally did.
Oh, there it is.
Honestly, even with the Ganjin and Zhang tribes serving as nothing more than one-note characters to serve as walking plot devices to help drive home the themes for the episode, that's not even its worst character-related offense for me. No, see, that distinction belongs to how Aang actually settles this century-long dispute. See, during that...
But how... What other ways could you have settled the dispute is another question.
Each tribe tells a member of Team Avatar the story of how their tribes came to be in conflict. The Ganjins tell Katara the story about how their forefathers...
And do you guys think this is not interesting? I thought this was very interesting because you could literally look at real-life examples. Again, like... looking into like Israel and Palestine and how people argue the origins of like Moses and like Muhammad being there and who had claim to the land and during the Ottoman rules and all this stuff. So it's like interesting to see two different perspectives on something that we don't know the truth on. And I actually prefer and I like the fact that we don't know the actual truth. Aang lying we'll talk about more though.
Jin Wei was transporting a sacred orb across the land as part of the Ganjin's ancient redemption ritual, only to be assaulted and have the orb stolen by a member of the Zhang tribe, Wei Jin. However, the Zhangs tell...
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry. I'm so excited to talk about the lying part, but I thought the backstory is so bad it's cringy. Okay, so your reasoning for why it's bad is because it's cringy. To you, it's cringy. To me, it's not. To me, it's interesting. To me, the beach was a cringy episode. To you, it's not. To you, it was interesting. So is that something that's really... How do you define cringe? That's a very subjective thing to talk about, no?
Sokka a slightly different version of this story, proclaiming that Wei Jin merely came upon Jin
And
Wei
the art
by
style is
chance,
cool here.
as the latter had fallen over injured, and Jin Wei sent Wei Jin to return the orb to his village and get help, but as soon as Wei Jin arrived in Ganjin territory, the Ganjins just assumed he'd stolen the orb and locked him up for 20 years. And at the end of the episode, after the feuding tribes worked together to ride out of the Great Divide on the backs of the canyon crawlers,
Look, they worked together.
the Zhangs and the Ganjins look like they're about to bury the hatchet, only to decide that they can't change the past and get ready to fight to the death for the
Of course!
second time in about 4 minutes.
Oh my god! Like, I really don't understand. I feel like so many people... I mean, literally, I keep going back to Israel, Palestine, but there's so many places in the world that are like this. Like, you look at India, Bangladesh, you look at... There's so many places where there's conflict. Even Azerbaijan, where my parents were born, and Armenia. It's just... People have conflict. Just because they work together once doesn't mean they solve centuries-long conflict. Like, this is not... This is actually realistic. It's so cool. You didn't think how the tribes caused infighting between Katara and Sokka another negative? Negative in what sense? I think that was good, like, story writing. It was, like, interesting to show that everyone is human, that even they could, like, have infighting. Aang relies on those boneheads, so you can say this episode causes more delay to the end goal. It's worse than just filler. Oh my god. Aang relies on those boneheads, so you can say this episode causes more delay to the end goal. Yeah, but you could also say that, like it showed how complex things are and how it isn't so simple. If it was so simple, actually, I would have probably disliked this episode more if they got along here. Because they work together, they get along. That wouldn't make sense to me. Sokka and Katara started fighting for no good reason to believe them. Okay. But like, I feel like you guys are ignoring like what happens in reality a lot of the time. Like, people aren't all like daisies and roses about things in the world, right?
Does something that, to me at least,
and just because the episode needed them to fight, just because the episode needed certain things to fall into place, is literally every episode of any show, right? The writer wants to progress the plot of the episode or of the show a certain way, so they'll write the characters to do certain things in a certain way. Like, it didn't. Why did Aang hearing Katara in one of the first episodes in the water made him go into the Avatar state? Like, that was an anime moment. That made no sense. But we all liked it. Why? Because it's an anime moment. It's whatever. Like, there's so many moments that just don't make sense. It's just, that's how writers write. Enemies working together to defeat a greater threat than going back to being enemies is very common. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's also realistic. Like, there are real world countries that go into alliances because those alliances, you know, are mutually beneficial, but then they'll get rid of the alliance afterwards because they're not mutually beneficial anymore, right? Like, this is not crazy. You add a good reason for something to happen, but but what, you're defining good subjectively. And they explain how the Avatar state works. Oh, the Avatar state works that Aang could go into the Avatar state because he hears Katara's voice outside of the water. And how does he even hear her voice? Like, that was BS. But we all liked it, and I'm not saying it was a bad moment. Like, something doesn't need to always be realistic to be good, but being realistic doesn't mean it's good also. But I think in this case it applies because, I mean, it seems like you guys are finding that it isn't realistic or it isn't making sense. When he's in danger, okay. He did not get out of the water because he was in danger. He got out of the water because he heard Katara's voice. Aang hears Katara's voice. I don't know if that's... Water. Oh my god. Avatar state. Okay. Aang... I thought it'd be easier to find. Aang Avatar state episode 2, was it? It was one of the first episodes. Every time Avatar... Oh, first time he went into Avatar state, I think. Oh, it literally shows you in the first 2 seconds. He hears Aang! And then he goes into Avatar state. That's BS! That's an anime moment. But you know what? That's enjoyable to watch. Oh my god. Because that's how Ping ranked them, which is why this video was requested. Wait. Hold up. Okay? You guys, I'm not arguing, okay, that this is an objectively S-ranked tier episode. I'm arguing for me that it is. For subjective reasons. But I'm also arguing against reasons that you guys are giving me that are bad. Because I honestly think they're just bad reasons. Like, whatever. Yeah, but that's to make it cinematic. What? No, bro, that's not to make it cinematic. He literally... What? That is not true. Pull up the list, sir. Even if it was at the bottom of S, like, no one's lists are gonna be equivalent. The reasons you guys are giving for this episode to be the worst of the franchise, I don't agree with it. I'm telling you why, and I think my reasons are reasonable, but, you know. So you can agree that, no, I don't think it's subjectively bad, but I can see that I can see how it's, wait. Do you agree that it's subjectively bad? But subjectively, like, it's subjective, so I can say that it's subjectively bad for some people and subjectively good for others. Like, that's, yeah, obviously. But I can see why one would not put it in S tier. Like, I think that's totally fair. I don't know about better than half. I would have to brush up. But if we're talking plot, literary analysis, storyline in this episode is entirely valid. Yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. It totally is to make it cinematic. Get to the line, because that's like... Okay, you guys are acting like Aang never lied before. Like, I don't know how you guys forget. Aang lied about being Kuzan and being a firebending student that had relations to... Like, he lied about that. He went to become a fire bending student, and he stayed as a student. He didn't have to stay as a student. Like, you guys act as if Aang has never lied in his life, and that it goes against his like nomadic ways. Like, that is not the key. Like, that would only be key if you would reject every single time Aang lied throughout the series. No, that's how liking something works. Yeah, it's like all of other Aang's lies are justified, bro. All right, let's just continue watching. That's why I specifically mentioned that he could have stopped going to the school and he continued going there and therefore continued to lie to be a student. So that was on him. That's not justified. He just wanted to have fun. He wanted to experience being a firebending student. That's not like like for this episode, you guys have. It seems like a lot of people have this position that Aang is always morally good and never lies, and it's just not true.
Completely out of character.
I never said it goes against his nomadic ways. Okay, so then what's wrong with him lying in this case?
Lies and tells a completely fabricated story about the confrontation between Jin Wei and Wei Jin, claiming that it was nothing more than a game called Redemption, and that Jin Wei merely dropped the ball, allowing Wei Jin to pick it up, only to be put in a penalty box for about 2 minutes when he stepped out of bounds. And this works?
Why wouldn't it work? He's the Avatar. He has... Oh, this is so frustrating to look at. Like, I mean, I will be fair. It is kind of weird how right away they... Like, wow, you know? But at the same time, he is the Avatar, and he has a lot of credence, or, like, there's a lot building up to him. Like, he was alive for over 100 years. Like, I can understand why they believed him, right? I remember watching it, and I believed Aang. But I was also a young, dumb kid, so maybe that's why. I don't know. I'm actually surprised the tribes believed it too. I believed it, but I was a kid. I don't know. I'm sorry. This literally sounds like if someone was talking about Israel versus Palestine and said, how can they be arguing against each other? Like, this makes no sense. And then you point to something good they did together and then show how they just go back at it again. And then there's someone that comes by that can be proven to be around during the same time that the conflict started and says this whole story. Like if you replace this politically, it would just look like someone who's saying, how could they believe in these stupid things when that's just like people believe in things. I don't know.
Agreeing to put the past behind them and travel to Ba Sing Se as a single tribe before Aang reveals that he kind of just made the whole thing up in order to settle their feud. And to get his hands on some of that custard tart that he saw earlier. Okay, not that I also wouldn't make something up as an excuse to get these bickering cardboard cutouts.
There you go.
That's out of my life, but what? And look, I totally get what's...
Oh my god, bro. It sounds so like... Like people who it sounds like an atheist who's crying about how religion is fake and that it's so obviously fake. How could they believe that Jesus walked on water? This is so stupid. That's what this sounds like. It's like that's how people think. What's up, Zakar? Yeah.
Hello there.
I don't know. The story sounds entirely valid. Millennium-old tales tend to be significantly fabricated, especially when tied to tensions like this. Yeah, there you go. Aang is the savior, and his flaws have more weight to them than the normal person. He spits on their traditions with his clout. I really wanted to know the truth. But I think it's so cool that we don't know the truth, because it doesn't solve who's right. And that's like what reality is. We don't know the truth about a lot of things that happened so many years ago. And that's why there are feuds between people now because of things that happened so many years ago. Like, that's just how it is, no? And then this episode gives you the middle finger. I like that, though. I like that it didn't give you the reason. Oh, I really want to make a video on this. It's a simulation. We live in a simulation. You guys ever saw that? Maybe we'll watch that later.
Here, Aang lied all the time in other episodes, and yeah, that's completely true. But those other times when he lied or withheld the truth usually held some actual narrative purpose, or...
Not when he did it with the fire to become a firebending student.
Was at least in line with Aang's character. When...
It's in line with Aang's character then because he just wanted to be a firebending student. And here he just wanted to solve the issue of them bickering. Like, that's not... I don't see how that's like a crazy thing. You're just saying why the idea of the episode is good, but so badly made. No, I'm saying how the episode was made well and how it could have been worse otherwise. Like, I feel like if they fought together, right, against those crawlers, and then they made up, I think that would have made the episode worse. If we were able to find out the truth, I think that might have made the episode worse too. I find it interesting that the truth is not revealed, and you're kind of left on a cliffhanger because that's how a lot of life is. But, I don't know. More facts. I'm watching it.
Sokka and Katara at first that he was the Avatar. That's believable because it stems from Aang's fear of the responsibilities of being the Avatar and the shame and guilt that he felt because he failed to live up to those responsibilities, choosing instead to run away from his destiny. When he lied to Katara and Sokka about not having the map with directions to where their dad was just a few episodes later, that not only stemmed from Aang being a little bit jealous of Sokka and Katara.
I thought that was pretty terrible, by the way.
Being able to bond with someone like Bato, who was from their own tribe, something he obviously wouldn't be able to experience for himself, but also it played on his fear that Sokka and Katara, the only two humans he could, in a sense, call his family, would abandon him the second they were able to find their dad. And when Aang went undercover as a student at the Fire Nation school, it was not only so he could potentially find out crucial information about the Fire Nation for Sokka, and not
that
only
is
because
such
he felt
BS,
like he could
bro.
undo some of the damage of the cultural propaganda and still...
Yo, oh my god. I want to show you guys the line where Aang literally, like, tries to convince Sokka to stay as, like, an undercover student. His whole reasoning was because it was fun. It wasn't like he made up these reasons to allow for Sokka to allow him to stay, but he didn't care about that. Like, it was pretty evident. He's a kid. You can understand why Aang lied in other bits because of the emotional background? No, not in this case. Oh my god. Did you edit and put your tier list on YouTube or your word for backlash? No, I didn't. The thing is, I know how I am, and I know if I were to edit it, I would have spent a lot of time editing it, trying to like make close-ups and stuff, and just to upload it like that, I feel like I wouldn't like that. So I think I'm just going to keep uploading all my streams as VODs, like as videos on my... I already have a channel where I just upload all those videos. So that's going to be uploaded like that. Aang did it because he has never experienced to be a normal kid before. He did it because he wanted to have fun, sure. And that's a good enough reason.
Into the kids of the Fire Nation, but also probably because he never got to experience life just being a normal kid.
What did you just watch this and take all the talking points to say to me, Diego?
All three of these instances are totally in line with Aang and who he is as a person, and are actually believable reasons for him to deceive people or withhold the truth. The lie that he tells in The Great Divide is completely out of left field. It's a lie that's not only for an entirely selfish and shallow purpose, but you would think, of all people, that Aang, who was incredibly hostile towards the residents of the Northern Air Temple at first, because he believed their industrialization was ruining the symbols of the Air Nomads' culture and history, wouldn't want to do anything to potentially shatter a group of people's perception of their own culture and traditions, and yet that's exactly what he did here by reducing the goddamn ritual, something that was central to their culture.
What? Okay. What other way do you think he could have solved that? Give me one other way, and I'll stop talking about this forever. One other credible way that he could have solved this issue between the two tribes without lying. There's literally no other way. You could even argue that this is a better lie than the lie against their uncle, Sokka, and like hiding the map. Because he hid the map out of selfishness because he didn't feel that emotional stuff, because he didn't feel that way with them. But that was a much worse reason to hide the map, which is actually needed. Like, that's a worse outcome, I should say, versus this where you're actually helping people. Like,
to nothing more
you can argue that it's bad to lie and stuff like that, but at least the outcome it's outcome oriented. Like, he's thinking of the outcome and he's doing something that results in a positive outcome, as opposed to in the other case, he literally does something that results in a negative outcome because of his own personal biases, which is not really the airbender way.
Little kids having poor sportsmanship over a game. Look,
I
don't care how good that custard tart was, it is not worth completely contradicting such a core component of your protagonist.
Protagonist. Sorry. I'm not hating on the guy. It's just funny how he talks like that. Headband is not that great of an episode either. Okay, well, I think the worst time he lied, from recollection at least, and from what they've showed, is literally the place with the waterbender. Like the waterbender thing that I just talked about. Handbender is 1,000 times better than the Great Divide, though. Okay. That's 1,000 times. That's definitely not hyperbole. He could have just whipped out some firebending and burned them alive. Exactly. Would you guys have been better with that? If he just whipped out some firebending? Well, he didn't have firebending then, but if he just killed them, analytically, it's a worse lie of the map. Exactly. It's worse. But the Great Divide lie is badly written. How is it badly written? Tell me how. That's how Aang could have solved the all fight. He could see that you're all are not going to solve a difference, but I hope my selfishness to save the world will inspire you to be better. Why would that change them? Why would the two tribes that care about what he was saying? And he did try to verbally communicate to them to stop when they were fighting. He tried verbally communicating. Like, he literally did that. It has nothing to do with the character. Then why would he lie all these other times? Oh, what do you mean it has nothing? It has so much to do with the character. He tried to solve it civilly, with verbally, earlier on in the episode, and then he clearly couldn't, so he solved it in a different way. He tries to solve issues. That's in line with his character. He even solved it with a better outcome than any other way, really. And he tried other ways. So that's not even... It has so much to do with his character. As I was surprised with the waterbending episode. I thought that was way out of character for him, but I could still understand that. Oh, he doesn't, like, he hasn't had family, and he's scared of Sokka and Katara leaving him. But still, that was very unlike what he would do. But I mean, you don't always follow your ideals, right? Ideals are ideals because you strive towards your ideals. So that made sense to me. Like, oh my god, you missed it. He doesn't solve their issues. He does. He solves their issues. He's wasting his time. He could just leave them to show the viewers you can't solve everything. But he does solve their issues. You could argue whether it was ethical or not. Like, they agreed to bind together under one tribe, right? That's what the guy said. Albeit, I would argue, if anything, that's the weirdest thing. That just like that, they were friends. That was kind of dumb. But that's like so far from what you guys are saying. So, is the tension of defeat and feeling unable to solve conflict as his duty as the Avatar not an emotional thing? Exactly. Exactly. That was funny.
Ultimately, on top of everything else I've talked about in this video, I think what puts the Great Divide so low in the IMDb ratings for the show, and what lands it so low in the personal rankings of a lot of Avatar, the IMDb ratings for the show.
It's only low relative, yeah.
And what lands it so low in the personal rankings of a lot of Avatar fans is just how utterly inconsequential the entire episode is. And listen, I don't want anyone to think that I think
it's actually one of the episodes to not feature Zuko or Iroh. Okay. That's what it said on the... Okay. Zuko alone was literally just Zuko. And it was a great episode. Like, what does that matter? Do you need every character in an episode to make it a good episode? That's such a weird thing to argue.
It's a completely unwatchable episode or anything like that, or that there's nothing good about it whatsoever. It's still got some great action scenes. I like the idea of the lessons they wanted to convey, even if I didn't enjoy the execution.
I enjoyed that.
I always love when animators give themselves an excuse to experiment with different art styles.
Yeah, that was cool.
Did during the different retellings of the Jin Wei.
That was so cool
story.
too.
But this is an episode that doesn't really add anything to the overall narrative.
There are many episodes. You could argue that it does add in different ways, but like there's so many like quote-unquote filler episodes. I don't...
Doesn't add anything to the universe outside of the existence of the Great Divide itself, and doesn't give any new meaningful development to the characters we're familiar with, or introduce any new memorable characters that...
The fact that I remember them and I was talking about them, and I don't even remember the pirate episode much. Now I'm starting to remember it though. At least speaks to me that I remember these characters. You guys remember these characters. It's not ethical. Aang should have left them fighting and moved on. That's a subjective position to have though, right, Aqua? Or throw a tornado at the... Aang didn't know firebending. Yeah, at that point. I'm tired because I really give up on explaining my points. Same.
That would actually resonate with anyone. Ultimately, the Great Divide is kind of just a filler episode. And hey, listen.
Filler episode.
Not lost on the purpose of filler episodes, alright? It's a necessary thing.
Yeah, honestly, I think the worst type of filler episodes, I think, like, even as much as we're arguing, I think we could all agree, even if it's not that good or it's good, that it's still not a bad episode and that it's not the best episode. Like, that it still does something. Like it's still an episode. When you look at filler episodes in some anime where there's no character, like, I would argue there's character development here, but I'm sure some of you guys wouldn't. There's no character development, and like there's some other stuff. Like there was a part in Naruto. We have this in this video left. There was some time in and this video was like 6 minutes, but you know how long I take for some videos, I guess. There was some time in Naruto where there were literally filler episodes of just dreams, like people's dreams. That I thought was like one of the worst type of filler. Like, you could still have character development, but it's people's dreams. And it had nothing to do with the progression of the plot, which was, like, nearing its end. So, let's just come together. This creates an episode that's annoying to watch. I would say The Beach was annoying to watch for me.
And all the great shows have them. And unlike what some people think, a lot of filler episodes or filler arcs can be pretty good and really entertaining, even if they don't offer a lot of narrative progression. And I do understand that there's
that's how I felt with this.
Avatar fans that actually like this episode and its themes. And
thank you, bro.
I promise you that the point of this video is not to try and retroactively convince you that you didn't enjoy something you enjoyed. All I'm saying is that
you can't
for
convince
me.
me.
And for a lot of other Avatar fans, The Great Divide isn't as entertaining or as endearing as other episodes of the show, and
that's
the
fine.
lessons that it tries to teach are conveyed much better in other episodes. It doesn't add anything substantial to the characters in the universe, and ultimately, you could cut The Great Divide out of Avatar canon.
You could cut so many episodes out of Avatar canon and it would still be fine.
Nothing of real value would be lost. Honestly, I know
nothing of real value. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. We already talked about the different like ideals they had in this episode and how they were executed. And Aang lying, I don't think goes against his position. He tried to verbally convince whatever.
This is
we
a
already
really
talked about all
easy
this.
joke to make, but I think the overall legacy of The Great Divide was summed up pretty perfectly by the Ember Island players.
Look, it's the Great Divide, the biggest canyon in the Earth Kingdom.
Let's keep flying.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's literally what Sokka says in the episode. He's like, let's keep going. He didn't want to be like, that's funny, but that's not because they were making a callback that the episode was terrible, right? Or like, I would assume that it's literally because that's what Sokka said in that episode. Did you say an Avatar Karen just now? What? No. I gotta go. Good luck. Nice to talk about stuff like this. Alright, see you, Diego. Thanks for popping in. I'm reading backwards again. I know, and although you were using the joke to point out the silliness, it's a great solution for this episode. Yeah, honestly, if Aang just demolished all of them, that would go against his character, but that would have been pretty cool to see. They do it as a callback to how bad it was. Okay, but that's literally what Sokka says in the episode, so.
Myself. But now I want to hear from you guys.
Jesus Christ. Oh. There's nothing wrong with this episode. Exactly. Yo, this person knows what's up. Alright, let's watch the next video. We're up to Yo's video finally.
Imagine there's a hotel with infinite rooms. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on forever.
Read the comment out loud? Oh my god. I already X'd out of the page. It basically said something like, essentially what I said. That it shows kind of the two sides and how narrow-minded they are and like everything I said, essentially. Basically, I'm a genius. Alright, let's keep watching.
This is the Hilbert Hotel, and you are the manager. Now, it might seem like you could accommodate anyone who ever shows up, but there is a limit. A way to exceed even the infinity of rooms at the Hilbert Hotel. To start, Let's say only one person is allowed in each room and all the rooms are full. There are an infinite number of people in an infinite number of rooms.
Wait, I have to think for this. The Infinite Hotel. Oh, you know this?
Then someone new shows up and they want to.
Oh, wait.
Then
I want to hear. I want to hear.
Are full. There are an infinite number of people in an infinite number of rooms. Then someone new shows up.
What?
Let's say only one person is allowed in each room and all the rooms are full. There are an infinite number of people in an infinite number of rooms.
All the rooms are full. But if there are an infinite number of rooms, how could they run out of room? I watched the OG video years ago. This animated one is pretty recent though. Oh, okay. I don't know about this.
Then
So don't spoil
someone new
it.
shows up and they want a room. But all the rooms are occupied, so what should you do? Well, a lesser manager might turn them away, but you know about infinity, so you get on the PA and you tell all the guests to move down a room. So the person in room 1 moves to room 2, the one in room 2 moves to room 3, and so on down the line.
This already makes no sense, because if there's an infinity amount of rooms, it can never be closed. This seems like there's a limited amount of rooms, but there an infinite amount of possibilities to make rooms. Because if they all move down one, then like a new door is created at the end. Like, I don't get that.
Now you can put the new guest in room 1. If a bus shows up with 100 people, you know exactly what to do. Just
you move 100
everyone
over?
down 100 rooms and put the new guests in their vacated rooms. But now say a bus shows up that is infinitely long, and it's carrying infinitely many people. You knew what to do with a finite number of people, but what do you do with infinite people?
What?
You think about it for a minute and then come up with a plan. You tell each of your existing guests to move to the room with double their room number. So the person in room 1 moves to room 2.
They're using infinite as a placeholder for an X amount of people or rooms, you know, X amount. That's not how infinity works. Like, they're using infinite like it's 100, let's say. So everyone moves double over to fit infinite, like the next 100 people. That's the whole point of infinity. What do you mean that's how? Am I dumb? Like, don't answer that. It's rhetorical. Infinity.
Infinity.
The state or quality of being infinite. A number greater than any assignable quantity or countable number. That's a... Infinity is forever. Yeah, it's never ending. So you can't have a... You literally can't define it. You can't... Guys, this makes no sense. You can fill infinite with infinite. What? Now...
Room 2 moves to room 4, room 3 to room 6, and so on. And now, all of the odd-numbered rooms are available.
Makes no sense.
And you know there are an infinite number of odd numbers, so you can give each person...
If there's an infinite number, then it doesn't matter. You literally just push them all in because it's infinite.
...person on the infinite bus a unique, odd-numbered room. This hotel is really starting...
Infinite plus 1 is still infinity. I agree with you on this one, Ping. This video loses all logic. Thank you! Okay, I'm not that crazy. Jesus. Is this a troll? Infinity plus 1 is still infinity. Exactly! No, that's the point. Infinity plus 1 is still... Like, it doesn't matter because infinity is infinity. You can't define it. It's never ending. So, it just makes no sense.
Starting to feel like it can fit everybody. And that's the beauty of infinity. It goes on forever. And then, all of a sudden, more infinite buses show up. Not just...
Like, the whole logic, it's illogical. Wait. Am I dumb? Like, it just makes no sense. Arguing against this as someone who doesn't have multiple PhDs isn't gonna go well for you. I mean, what? This doesn't make sense. I guess I don't get it.
An infinite number of infinite
You're looking from
buses.
another perspective? Maybe,
So
I guess.
what can you do? Well, you pull out an infinite spreadsheet, of course. You make a row for each bus, bus 1, bus 2, bus 3, and so on, and a row at the top for all the people who are already in the hotel.
You guys just want to seem smart.
Columns are for the position each person occupies. So you've got hotel room 1, hotel room 2, hotel room 3, etc. And then bus 1, seat 1, bus 1, seat 2, bus 1, seat 3, and so on. So each person gets a unique identifier, which is a combination of their vehicle and their position in it. So how do you assign the rooms? We'll start in the top left corner and draw a line that zigzags back and forth across the spreadsheet, going over each unique ID exactly once. Then, imagine you pull on the opposite ends of this line, straightening it out. So we've gone from an infinite by infinite grid to a single infinite line.
What do you mean I teach this thing?
It's then pretty simple just to line up
that's
each
true,
person on that
but-
line with a unique room in the hotel. So everyone fits, no problem. But now a big bus pulls up, an infinite party bus with no seats. Instead, everyone on board is identified by their unique name, which is kind of strange. So their names all consist of only 2 letters, A and B.
I have to be high or on some sort of drug to understand this.
But each name is infinitely long. So someone is named A, B, B, A, 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 A.
Okay, thank you, Diego. Well, okay, I'm just gonna say I guess I don't understand this, and I'm kind of interested to watch this TED video after this, if that's okay with you guys, because I don't know if this is gonna be the same exact thing, but did not mean to click on it. But
A, and so on forever. Someone else is named A.
An infinite bus and multiple infinite buses would be the same. Yeah, that's what I don't get.
A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, etc. On this bus, there's a person with every possible infinite sequence of these 2 letters. Now, A, B, B, A, I'll call him ABBA for short. He comes into the
good
hotel
band.
to arrange the rooms. But you tell him, sorry, there's no way we can fit all of you in the hotel.
Different sizes of infinites. There are more numbers between 0 and 1 than integers between 0 and infinity. Wouldn't it literally be the same? What?
And he's like, what do you mean?
I don't
There's
get
an
it.
infinite number of us, and you have an infinite number of rooms. Why won't this work? So you show him. You pull out your infinite spreadsheet again and start assigning rooms to people on the bus.
I don't get
so
it.
You have room 1, assign it to ABBA, and then room 2 to AB, 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 AB repeating, and you keep going, putting a different string of A's and B's beside each room number. Now here's the problem, you tell ABBA. Let's say we have a complete infinite list. I can still write down the name of a person who doesn't yet have a room. The way you do it is you take the first letter of the first name and flip it from an A to a B. Then take the second letter of the second name and flip it from a B to an A. And you keep doing this all the way down the list, and the name you write down is guaranteed to appear nowhere on that list.
I mean, yes. Yes? If they're all unique numbers, then you could recreate unique numbers from those unique numbers. But if they're infinite, then they're... I don't know.
Because it won't match the first letter of the first name, or the second letter of the second name, or the third letter of the third name. It will be different from every name on the list by at least 1 character, the letter on the diagonal. The number of rooms in the Hilbert Hotel is infinite, sure, but it is countably infinite, meaning there are as many rooms as there are positive integers 1 to infinity. By contrast, the number of people on the bus is uncountably infinite. If you try to match up each one with an integer, you will still have people left over. Some infinite...
I'm starting to understand this, but it's still weird how you could have a countable infinity. That doesn't really make sense to me. The use of a total is not a wise one because it's literally impossible based on perception of reality. However, I see it's more math equations, so if you use the equation without the hotel, it may make more sense.
Bigger
Yeah, maybe.
than others. So there's a limit to the people that you can fit in the Hilbert Hotel. This is mind-blowing enough, but what's even crazier is that the discovery of different-sized infinities sparked a line of inquiry that led directly to the invention of the device you're watching this on right now.
A computer?
But that's a story for another time.
Okay. What the hell? How an infinite... What is this called? By the way, I'm gonna put shorts on because Jesus, it became hot out of nowhere. I'll be right back. I wanna understand this more. Okay. Whew, that feels better. Feels bad, man. I really love math. Same. It is interesting, I guess. How does infinite work? The sequence of natural numbers never ends and is infinite. Yeah, that's why I don't get this. Infinite hotel. Infinite hotel paradox. I don't get this. That's a counterintuitive property of infinite sets. So the fully occupied hotel with infinitely many rooms. That already doesn't make sense. May still accommodate additional guests, even infinitely many of them, and this process may be repeated infinitely often. With a countably infinite number of rooms. Isn't that paradoxical? How could you have something that's infinite and yet countable? Oh, no, you could have it countable, but it would be countable to infinity and beyond, no? Countable, and that's probably a good start. Yeah. I mean, I could guess what it is, but countable versus uncountable infinity. A set is countably infinite if its elements can be put in one-to-one correspondence with a set of natural numbers. Which is because I said that is so large it cannot be counted even if we keep counting forever. Can be put in one-to-one correspondence with a set of natural numbers. Okay. Set of natural numbers. Can be defined either as n equals z, unknown or represent. Natural number is just like all numbers except 0, right? And that are like countable. Yeah, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. To infinity. No? It still doesn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. This makes no sense. We're excluding finite sets. We usually use the term countably infinite. Okay. A set is countably infinite if its elements can be put in that. In other words, one can count off all elements in the set in such a way that even though the counting will take forever, you will get to any particular element. Okay, that makes... Okay, now it doesn't make sense. In a finite amount of time, the set of integers 0, blah, 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 is clearly infinite. However, as just blah, 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 we can count off all the integers. Counting off every integer will take forever. But if you specify any integer, say negative 10 to that, this integer in the counting process is in a finite amount of time. We will get to this integer in the counting in a finite amount of time. Oh, sure. Okay. I mean, finite amount of time, like, just means having limits or bounds. That's so tricky because you could... That doesn't make sense at all. Welcome back, Nico.
Hello there.
How can it be a finite... How can you count to it in a finite amount of time if you could count off forever? Like, it would end up being an infinite amount of time, no? To get to an infinite number, let's say. Counting infinite is in contrast to uncountable, which describes a set that is so large it cannot be counted even if we keep counting forever. So it seems like countably infinite is not infinite. It's just a set of numbers that are large, but not so large that it's infinite. No? You'll reach 100 trillion, but if you're counting every number between 0 and 1, you'll never reach 0 no matter how much time passes. Oh. I get it. Why do you explain better than mathinside.org? Okay, that actually makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That's so cool. That's so trippy. That's very trippy. Okay, we watched all the videos, so you guys could send videos now.
I keep screaming as loud as I can while I spin around.
With my heart, it feels like.
I think sounds can drive you crazy, no? Longest anyone has ever lasted in this room is 45 minutes. Jesus. Because you could hear everything going on in your body. That's pretty cool. Oops,
Pokemon and the
Pokemon and the Pokemon Adventure. Have you seen Pokemon Rusty? Nope. English is hard. No worries, no worries. You don't have to teach English, so you're fine.
Stop playing with me! Which one of you took it? Give it to me! Give it to me now!
I'm sorry, Granddad. Just seemed to be a waste of a bomb-ass phone. Couldn't even get the stupid lady to work.
Damn you, Negro child! You don't understand what
Bow.
Robert, you should calm down so we can discuss this like adults.
We're not discussing anything. You're not a person. You are a machine.
So are you, Robert. We're just made of different materials.
Why is it so low volume?
Stronger than our physical beings.
Love? Shit. I know something else stronger than
Shit.
your physical being. It's this hammer.
911, what is your emergency?
I'm trapped in a house, and there's a man attacking me with a hammer. His name is Robert Freeman. I'm sending you a picture.
Okay, location. Officers are en route. Is he still attacking you, ma'am? Can you get to a safe place in the house, ma'am?
I don't know if you guys could hear it, but basically Siri goes against the guy. I never heard that one before. I haven't seen Pokemon Rusty. Nope. We did hit the 2-hour mark, which is what I want to hit when we do watching videos. But I don't mind going a little longer if you guys have more videos to watch. I know Yesik had one. But yeah. But yeah. If you guys have anything you want me to watch, I'll type it in. We'll watch it. I'll give you guys like 2 minutes. I think I have a Jeopardy button. No, I know I have one. You sent a playlist on Discord? Wait, Pokemon Rusty. If you like it, you can see it. I think I've seen this before. I legit think I've seen this before.
Look out, world! Today's the day I become a Pokemon trainer.
Yeah, I have seen this before. I've seen a lot of dorkly stuff. I have 2 videos. Do you prefer Death Game Theory? Ooh, Game Theory. Ooh, or Living in Japan. I don't mind either. You could request both, or whichever you want me to watch together.
Absolutely not, Rusty. But Dad, it's my destiny. No,
I've watched this
your
before.
Destiny is to go to college and get a real job, mister.
I haven't watched it in a long time.
I didn't bust our humps working so you could be some kind of professional pet owner. Red's mom lets him be a trainer.
Who is Red?
He's an awesome trainer from Pallet Town. I follow his Twitter. You're always going on about this Pallet Town. What's wrong with Beige Town? We're not even on the map,
Beige
Dad.
Town.
I'm 10 years old. I'm an adult. I can go wherever I want. Legally, yes, that is true. But as long as you're living under my roof, Buster, you're going to stay here and help out with the deli. Now, deliver this chicken panini
trying
to
to
the
look for
professor's
something.
house, then go to school.
It's just down the block from...
I know, Mom. It's literally the only other house in town. God.
I know, Mom.
Oh, hey, Rusty. That my lunch?
Professor Tree, you know a lot about Pokemon, right?
Not really. It was just the easiest grant to apply for. I got a monthly paycheck and a free lab. All I gotta do is count Pidgeys once in a while. Then I can spend the rest of my time growing pot. Shouldn't have told you that. I'm pretty high.
So you
I'm pretty
need someone to go
high.
in and study Pokemon for you.
Pokemon.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'll do it. my journey begins. I'll take this Kakuna as my first Pokemon.
For the game theory, it's all
You're good at
spoilers.
I thought that was a paperweight.
You and me, Kakuna, we're gonna catch them all. So long, Professor. Tell my parents I'm dead.
Rusty, wait! You took my panini! Whoa, 2 Pidgeys. A new record.
Yeah, I watched all of Pokemon Rusty a while ago though. This came out years ago, 2012. Game theory is all spoilers from what? I was looking for when I was a kid. I watched this. Someone made like a Pokemon story. Like I don't know if they made a ROM hack or something, but they made their own story, and I was so invested in it. And then they just stopped one day. And oh my god, I want to show you guys that, but I couldn't find it really quick. I had too many subscriptions on my old YouTube channel to find it.
You've got this. Fight.
It's great, yeah. Pokemon Rusty is funny with the Bidoof and stuff.
Go, Dad. Come on. Goku. You've got this. Fight.
Fight.
Dance for us, monkey.
Go, Dad. Come on.
Damn flat monkey. Sheesh. How's this one? First, do you agree it's only 10 minutes? The last 5 is spoilers. Okay.
For some of you, moving to Japan would be a dream come true, right?
Done it.
Right? But interestingly, I know so many people from overseas that moved to Japan and hated it.
That is so true. I might stop a lot in this video, but I actually... Ooh, look at that thing in the background, that figurine, whatever. When I was in Japan, I knew a lot of people who didn't like it because, well, really they didn't like their job. They didn't like teaching English. I'm thankfully really like teaching, so that with Japan, it was just amazing. Also, when I first studied abroad in Japan, there was a girl who didn't like it because people weren't straightforward, and she was very straightforward with everything. So she said I would never live here, and it's good she studied abroad to test it out, you know. Last 5 minutes is advertising? Oh, okay.
I lived briefly in Japan a while ago. The year I spent in Japan was probably the most unhappy of my life.
So
that's actually kind of crazy. Because the 2 years I spent in Japan were probably the happiest of my life.
Don't be surprised if it happens to you. Almost everyone who moves to Japan will hate Japan or Japanese culture sooner or later.
That's actually interesting that she's... I'm sorry for stopping this a lot if it's annoying. But that's kind of interesting that she says that because I met like an older New Yorker, Jewish New Yorker American who was living in Japan for 40 years. She was like in her late 60s or something. Or I don't know if late 60s, but around her 60s or whatever. And she was married to a Japanese American who was born in Cali. And they've been living in Japan together for like 40 years. And they talk about the pros and cons. And I mean, it makes sense. You're going to have pros and cons no matter what, right? But they're not tired of Japan, which is interesting. There are certain things though, like she was, one of the jobs she had, she would like translate or whatever. And one time she made a mistake, and her Japanese is really, really high level. One time she made a very small mistake, and this Japanese woman came to her and she's like, "Oh, you made this mistake." And like people will look at you differently, even if your Japanese is insanely good, because you're still a foreigner. I'm curious if she'll bring that up, I guess.
You might think it's impossible, especially Japan has so many cool things like anime, crazy game shows, and Mr. E's favorite electric baths. Yes.
Oh, I have been in electric baths, actually. It's really not that crazy, but it's literally like you know how you might have something massaging your back? Now imagine it's like little shocks massaging your back. It was cool, but it wasn't like, oh my god. But that, I mean, it was pretty cool the way that it works. Like you have electricity with water. Like what? I don't really remember that how it works. But
there are baths that send electric currents into the water.
Yep.
But don't.
Ooh, also if you're in it long enough, it's like a challenge, like trying to sit in it and the closer you push towards the electric shocks, the more it kind of paralyzes your body. It's crazy.
Alright, it's totally safe because water doesn't conduct electricity at all.
I guess that's how it works.
I've known so many people from overseas who moved to Japan and then hate Japan after, you know, living here for months or sometimes years later.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, Aqua. I think you hit it right on the nail. You'll never blend into the society as a foreigner. Also, Japan specifically is a very hard place to blend in. But also, like, you could always find foreigners, and you could kind of group in with them, but you may never feel like, I don't know. It's a bit tricky because, especially, a lot of foreigners will look different than Japanese people, and like 97 or 98% of the population. Actually, let's check right now. Percent of Japanese population. Japanese percent of Japan population Japanese. 97. I was right. So 97.8%, which is insane, right? 98% of people living in Japan are Japanese. I mean, that just makes things different, obviously. I actually liked it. I was also only there for 2 years. If I was there for 5-10 years, maybe things would change. But honestly, I just don't know. Find family with other foreigners, yeah. Also, there are... My assumption, and from what I've seen, people will gravitate... Like, the few Japanese friends I had in Japan were people who traveled abroad before. You know, like, you're always going to gravitate towards people you have, well, obviously in your circle, but that you have similarities with, right? If you share certain hobbies or stuff like that. So if someone has already, like, traveled abroad, then it's kind of easier, like, they kind of understand other cultures more, so that they can open up faster and stuff like that. Like, I don't think it's, like, the end of the world. Like, you could definitely make a life living in Japan. Okay, Nathan, calm down with the TikToks.
They usually come here.
Won't be clicking them all right now.
Loved video games, Japanese culture, or they just wanted some good old-fashioned Japanese fucking. Check out our new merch.
That was a mad good. That was a very good transition into an ad. I will say that it seems like there are a lot of foreigners, specifically white males, that end up marrying Japanese females, which is, I don't know why, but that seems to be a thing. Another thing I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, anime seems to be an influence for a lot of people. I was very lucky that a lot of aspects of Japanese culture were things that I really liked. And like, aside from just anime. And yeah, I feel like I was able to fit in more there than I would in certain places in the States, to be honest, because I kind of respect the culture there, kind of more than here, maybe even. I don't know. Foreigners who are strong in the English language can blend in a major city, can blend in living in American. Like New York, can blend in living in America. Yeah. I mean, if you go to Tokyo, you're probably going to be fine. I actually liked the fact that a lot of Japanese people I spoke to didn't know English well, because that made it so much more interesting. But I was only there for 2 years.
You want some fucking too, but after a while of living here, they become depressed. They hate Japan, and the only thing they want is go back to home.
I'm stopping this way too much, but personally, for me and some people that I knew, I only felt like I wanted to go back home once when I was in Japan, maybe twice, and that's when COVID hit, and I was forced to stay home and not go to work for like a month because I had more free time on my hand, and I was thinking, oh, I kind of want to like visit home. Other than that, I literally had reverse culture shock when I came back home. Like, I missed Japan for a full year. It was hard for me to just get over Japan, but always feeling lucky, I guess.
Are you okay?
People make so many memes with this.
I hate Japan. I want to go home.
There are many reasons.
I never had
why
that
it
experience.
happens. Maybe some of you have heard
Oh,
of cultural
God.
iceberg. If you imagine
Thanks, yo.
the culture of one country to be an iceberg floating in the ocean, the part of the iceberg you can see is usually the material aspect of the country's culture. So for Japan, this would be video games, Japanese food, cosplay, statues of Colonel Sanders in samurai armor, you know, obvious Japanese stuff. But what you don't see is the rest of the iceberg. And this is where the...
And I liked a lot of aspects of the rest of the iceberg. That's why I think I was okay there. I also genuinely love the language of Japanese relative to other languages. So that probably helped me personally a lot.
Non-material parts of the culture are. This can be things like ideas
tastes
on
okay.
work ethic, views on raising children, how society views discriminated people. It's usually this part of...
Jesus, I'm stopping this so often. But I will say that it seems like they're in the 80s. They're stuck in the 80s in a lot of ways. Discrimination being one of them. Music taste, maybe, even. And with globalization, a lot of things are changing. The young people in Japan are so different than the older people. Like mountains different. And they're talking about Fortnite and stuff. They don't even know their own religious holidays, like relative to Shintoism or Confucianism or Buddhism, depending on, you know, what you do. Like, they don't know it. I remember teachers explaining things and the students are like, what? So I think that's just interesting. Hentai is on the top. Oh, nice.
The culture.
On the top of the iceberg, yeah. That's why everyone wants to go to Japan. They watch hentai and they're like that. 20-minute video with ping pausing. It's a countable infinite. Yeah, you could count to it, but you know, it's infinite. I still don't get that really. Oh no, I do. Right, because you can count. Okay, let's just watch it.
When we move to a new...
By the way, I had spoiled milk or coconut. To be honest, sometimes I can't even taste if it's a good one or a bad one.
Country. So, because most of you who are watching this video might be interested in living in Japan and moving to Japan in the future, so I thought it would be a great idea to ask Mr. Eat to talk about his own experience and how he's been dealing with it.
I don't like the title of this video though. I wish it kind of said why you may hate living in Japan, but obviously you'll get more clicks for this title. Or I hope she at least made another video like why you'll love living in Japan to show like the other side. But...
Hello everyone, it's Mr. Eats.
Yeah, clickbait.
Now let's say you have this big plan to move to Japan. As you begin to prepare for your move, you start dreaming about all the adventures.
What the hell? Whoa! I don't dream about that.
You're gonna get into.
The hell?
Your happiness level starts to go higher and higher, and then you finally make that trip across.
That's another Jesus Christ. That's another great point. I think that helped me so much. I didn't think I was gonna live in Japan. My first plan in life was to work in Wall Street, to work in finance and make a lot of money in New York. That was literally my first plan. My backup plan was to live in Japan, as crazy as that might sound. So I went to the interview for this job in Japan to teach English, and I was chill. I didn't care much. And I think because of that, I wasn't nervous and I did well in the interview. I passed the interview and I was like, wow, I didn't think I would actually pass the interview. I guess I'm going to Japan. So my expectations weren't insanely high. That being said, I also studied abroad in Japan before, and that experience was amazing. So when I first went there to live there, I wasn't like, oh my God, Japan. But there were certain aspects of living there that are obviously very different than studying abroad. But anyway, my first plan in life is to work. My first plan, okay? I keep puzzles go. Unbanned space bar. Okay. In Spain without without the S, you mean, right? Spin? You're spinning?
Across the ocean, you get off the plane, and you're standing smack dab in the middle of Tokyo. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the experience is all so overwhelming. Now, every single thing that you're doing feels...
Study abroad before moving someplace. I think that's a good word of advice. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
It's like a grand adventure, and your happiness is just going through the roof.
Sushiro.
Welcome to the honeymoon phase.
I never had culture shock, really. Well, maybe I did, but
This is the first of 4 phases of culture shock that you're going to experience.
Chicken butt?
Now,
guess what?
People,
I don't know.
This is the most incredible part about moving to a new country. You're going to love the culture, the language, and the people. Seriously, you could get mugged in a back alley and you'll probably come out of it saying, wow, that was the most polite mugging I've ever had.
No, I had a friend who got mugged. He was scarred. That's dumb. I think that's... This video... it's like media which tells you one side of the story and makes it out to be either like insanely good or insanely bad, or maybe I don't know. Maybe muggings are usually like that, but or maybe they're exaggerating for comedic effect. But I had a friend who actually we were in Hokkaido, which is up north. We were on vacation in Japan, and there are some people that ask, "Oh, do you want a massage? Do you want a massage?" And he wanted a massage, so he went with them. Little did he know it was like Yakuza. And, it's a different type of massage. And they're like, oh, you're here for the massage, right? And he's like, no, I actually just want a normal massage. And they're like, we don't do that here. And they basically stole all his money from his wallet. I can start a harem. Oh, yeah, you have so many people who like you. Do it if you want, Nathan. Just don't say I said to do it. Is it true you didn't have any expectation of Japan through pop culture moving there? So first I studied abroad there first, and I had a lot of exposure to certain things when I studied abroad. Honestly, not to be completely honest, from what I can remember, obviously, and memory is a hard thing to kind of think about. I didn't think people would be screaming like they are in anime. Like some people think that. I will say one thing. They say that the work culture is very strict. Oh, thanks for the follow.
Charlie Green 1979 is now following.
I didn't think that they would. I did think that the work culture would be very strict and stiff because of what I've read or heard of. I did have some assumptions, but yeah, my personal experience didn't reflect that, I guess. I'm going to do it and say PP told me to do it. But if you say PP told me to do it, they'll think that you're talking about your PP, your penis, and then that wouldn't make sense. So. No culture shock? Come on, Ping. I don't believe that. Culture shock can be positive too, right? Like you can't believe how clean a city. Yeah, I guess you're right. I did have culture shock. You're right. You're right. You're right. I guess I didn't really have negative culture shock initially. I think you're completely right, though, Aqua. I guess I did have culture shock then. Like, the clean part is a great example of that. PP means Elliot? Haha, well, I only have one T in my name, so. How'd you not know?
The time that you spend here in the honeymoon phase and the next 3 phases varies from person to person. Now, when I moved to Japan, I was placed in this really nice little countryside town where I quickly made friends and became a part of the local community. I fell in love with every aspect of that town and the people around me. Heck, I even loved my job as an English teacher there. I found so much joy and happiness there that by the ripe old age of 28, I was considering my retirement there. But all of that came
That's pretty crazy.
After I met Mrs. Eats. No. I welcome to the living room floor. We'll be spending the
Sam assumed he's married to a Japanese woman, right? The one from the beginning.
rest of our night tonight. Now, what I wanted to say was that
Hey, Cashew, what's up?
was the best thing that could have ever happened in my life. Hello there. But it was all of the other circumstances that
Because I don't use your real name.
led me to a
Good jumping.
really dark place in life. The second phase of culture shock. The frustration phase. Now, once you hit the peak of happiness during the honeymoon phase, you'll start to get used to the new world around you. And your
That started happening to me, for sure.
happiness will actually begin to decline pretty quickly. The things you found most exciting have now become very, very normal to you, and the things that you didn't mind too much actually become annoying or even frustrating. But the frustration phase goes much, much deeper than that. This is a point where depression, resentment, and anger really can start to set in. And yes,
That's so weird to hear, because I feel like Japan actually changed me for the better. That I became a better person because of certain things that I would have found frustrating initially, but that I just adapted to. Nathan TikTok count 9. For me, it's surprising that their anime and shows and movies are so emotional, eccentric, and just plain out there, yet the people there best to conform and repress their emotions. That's what, yeah, it could be that they're trying to express themselves through the arts, right? Because they don't express themselves in life. But I also learned that stereotypes have a little bit of truth in them, but they're not absolute. There was plenty of people I've met who were very emotional and passionate about different things. But yeah, anime made me a better person. I legit said that to my mom. I legit told my mom, Naruto made me a better person. I tell everyone that, bro. They just laugh in my face. I don't know why. Those two are married in the video? Oh, okay.
Even though I love Japan now, there was a point in time where I really hated it and I wanted to go back home.
Dad.
So as my relationship with Mrs. Eats got deeper and deeper and we got closer and closer, I decided to leave that small town that I love so much to the big city of Osaka. There were a lot of factors that...
Osaka is actually one of the worst places I've been to. Osaka, if you go in the alleyways, don't ask me why I was in the alleyways with some weird Japanese guy who thought he was... That Japanese guy. My mom found this Japanese guy on Facebook who she thought was like Jewish because of his posts, but he just ended up like loving like Israel and like everything Jewish, to the point that he's like, do you speak Hebrew? Can you teach me? I don't know. It was such a weird experience, but it was cool. I like weird experiences. And then he took me to an alleyway where a bunch of Koreans were, and he made me drink like alcohol. And I was like, is he going to rape me? And then he didn't. And I just, yeah. That was why I was in the alleyways.
Made daily living just...
I should talk about my Japanese experiences more.
Incredibly difficult. The first was dealing with an actual Japanese-style commute. Now, in my old town,
Ooh. Understandable. I was very lucky that... Probably what he's going to say, probably similar to what I had. I was so lucky where I was placed. I lived in a Japanese city, in the heart of the city, but it wasn't a big city. Why was that so good, you ask? One, Japanese people around didn't know English that well, so it made interactions more interesting. Two, my rent wasn't that expensive, and yet I was close to all the food places, all the restaurants, everything. And three, travel was easy. I literally biked to every school I went to, or I would use the tram, like rarely, but it was just amazing.
I lived about a 5-minute bike ride away from school, so I never had to get on a train or a bus. But here in Osaka, I had to get on some of the most crowded trains and subways. Not only that, but my school was 2.5 hours away.
This depends on where you live, though. It's such a weird like thing to criticize. I feel like depends on where you live.
So I was up at 5:30 to get to school.
And he moved.
8, and it was a nightmare. After the 2.5-hour journey, I was rewarded not by friendly, smiling faces.
That was like my students.
But by...
some of them were like that, too.
Unless I was a cool, young, handsome boy like one of these members from the band Kiss My Foot 2, I wasn't going to get these kids interested at all. And yet...
I wasn't I had amazing schools too. I was very lucky, and I had a great just everything fit very nicely. That happens in every country. Yeah, this is a very weird thing to say. Why you'll hate living in Japan? Like, it's very dependent on which schools you teach in, how your personality merges or melds with like other people's personalities. Like, I know some there's this discrimination and stuff against like black people and stuff in Japan, but I think most black people take it in a fine way because a lot of people in Japan are ignorant. They just don't know. So it's like, it depends on you also, your point of view and how you handle certain things. Like, I was discriminated against also, but I don't really see it that way because I see it more as like just people being ignorant. So it doesn't really faze me, you know? And I like teaching them and showing them like something different than what they see every day. So it depends on your perspective, and I wish they talked more about that than this one guy's experience with kids sleeping in his classroom. That makes so much sense, Ping. That one guy in the alley made you drink magic juice and it got her judgment and make you like great divine. Maybe. You know what? I can't say that didn't happen. So I think the intent of the video is just to show up in people looking for pros and cons. It's probably a counterpart video. I would hope so. I think the intent of the video is to make a video that gets a lot of clicks. I mean, that's the intent for most YouTubers, myself included. I mean, nah, kind of. Not really. Like, to make content you want to make and stuff. Like, I'm sure.
Their name is, in fact.
This is definitely helpful information, but I just wish it was a bit more nuanced, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Kiss My Foot 2. So every day became this nightmare of getting on packed trains, lecturing in front of disinterested students, and me just putting on this face like everything was okay.
I mean, like, this is the story of many teachers too, right? Like, you're gonna teach disinterested students. Like, you're always gonna have classes where kids just don't want to learn. I don't know, it's so weird. You should start beef with this guy for clicks. I should start beef with everyone. Jesus Christ. I'm such a good, like, devil's advocate. I always think of the devil's advocate thing. Or maybe I'm not good at it, but I always, like, think of that. So, like, talking about the Great Divide, talking about this. Welcome back, Diego. That would be great. I don't like causing havoc for no reason, though.
Job dissatisfaction is one of the biggest reasons why you will hate Japan.
Stupid thing to say! Wait, I hope he counters this with something.
And it's one that I've heard from my fellow expats over the years.
How can you tell someone you will encounter job dissatisfaction? I mean, probably, but that is something you'll hate about Japan. I mean, what? Wait, what? I mean, maybe? Like, what? You know how many... The average teacher who teaches in Japan usually works with other teachers and usually has more than one school. So, as an example, I had 4 schools that I taught at, and teachers change every year in Japan because they get moved to different schools. They don't really have a choice in that. So, I've worked with dozens of different teachers. Of course, I'm going to have certain teachers that are hard to work with. It depends how your perspective and how you deal with the problems that come your way, right? This is such a weird thing to say. The Great Divide talk was so good. It was, right?
You'll most likely find yourself working as an English...
Oh my god! Oh. It just reminds me of... That's how it looks, guys. That's how it looks in a lot of places. Getting moved to a new school every year sounds like it would suck. Yes! It sucks for Japanese teachers, but I didn't have to go to new schools. We're watching Why You'll Hate Living in Japan, provided by Aqua.
English teacher at some point in your life in Japan. And while I did love teaching...
True. Most people, by the way, that go to Japan and are looking for work, unless you're from Southeast Asia, where a lot of people come for construction and stuff, I've met people like that, most foreigners from Western countries will generally come to Japan starting, if they want to make a career, starting as an English teacher, because you have to learn Japanese, right? For a lot of things.
School that I was at in my small town, it really wasn't the case for my school in the bigger city of Osaka. And to add insult to injury, there is a glass ceiling when it comes to your actual salary. You'll quickly find that for most teaching jobs here in Japan, you're going to hit the max of the salary, which is around 20 to 25k annually. And in a lot of...
That's not entirely true, but also kind of true. But that's... I really hope he provides more information here. So I'm not going to say anything for a few seconds.
In a lot of cases, this wage will almost never rise. Now, you could earn more money if you started teaching at a university or at a wealthy private school. You're going to be doing 2 to 3 times more work for that amount of pay. Now, while you're young and single, 25k isn't actually that bad. But once you start to settle down and you want to have kids, that 25k is not enough at all. And I haven't even mentioned that it's pretty common for Japanese women to quit their jobs after the child is born. So if you are a man and you are only earning 25k from your teaching job, you're gonna have to pick up a lot of part-time jobs in addition to your full-time job just to make ends meet. And
this frustrates me so much. I really hope he adds a caveat here.
Trust me, it is insanely common how many of my expat teacher friends have part-time jobs on the side while they're still teaching full-time jobs. And here's another reason that...
Okay. He doesn't caveat that. I want to show you guys something, okay? Some quick math, all right? Average rent in New York. There's more to this, but this is the first part of what I want to talk about. Okay. Average rent in New York City. $3,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment, okay? Obviously, to compare to New York is not a great example, but I'll explain why I'm doing this. Welcome, Miles. We're going to be a bit on this video, but when we finish this, you guys could send some more videos. Is cost of living higher or lower on average. Yeah, that's where I'm trying to get to. Are the teaching jobs in Japan only part-time? No. I want to explain this. So average rents in Manhattan, let's say average rent is 3K in New York. Okay, average salary in New York City is average is 66K. Okay, so if you take a calculator, which you guys won't see on screen, I think, but 66 divided by, or rather 4 divided, or let's say 3K, right? 3K divided by 66K. Quick maths. That's 4.5%. Well, that's actually dumb to do because 66 annually, right? So 3,000 times 12. 36,000 divided by 66K, right? 55% of your salary is probably going to rent in New York. That's why a lot of people in New York live together. Or you have families where a lot of people, there's a couple of people making money because it's hard to live in New York. Why is screen Pokemon Gaia? Oh, I pressed it by accident probably. Sorry. Screen in black. Thank you guys. I was just confused. New York is the highest cost of living in the US. Yeah, the only reason I bring it up is because I live in New York. Sorry. That's maybe not the best example. My point is to say that my rent in Japan, in the middle of the city, in that prefecture, which could be considered like a state, was $400 a month. It was like a studio, which was enough for me, but I'm also one person, right? Single. I lived with one other person for about a month or two, though, and that was fine, but $400 a month, and I was making 2 point something a month, like $2,000 a month. I would say for English teachers, right now, I don't know. Okay, this video was made in 2021, so I'm actually more surprised now. But average salary is like 30K. That's very low, but compared to cost of living, it's not at all. Like $400 divided by, what is $400? It was like $440. And I knew people who had less, and I knew people who had slightly more, depending on their area and how big their place was. And that's no subsidized rent or anything. So $440 times 12, $5,000 divided by 30,000. That's like what, like 20%? So 20%, because rent is usually the most expensive thing. 20% of my salary went to rent. I was able to travel and stuff like that. I'm also single. I do recognize that. What I want to say, though, is also being an English teacher in Japan is more of an entry-level job. So really what a lot of people who plan to live in Japan do is that they work as English teachers for a couple of years, and then when they find someone and they start settling down, they've in those couple of years studied Japanese a lot, and they move on to, a business setting or a different job that actually makes enough. It's just weird that he doesn't mention that. Like, you basically can't be an English teacher the rest of your life in Japan. That's just not how it is right now. That being said, he does mention private schools and stuff where things could be different, obviously. And a lot of people open up their own businesses called eikaiwas, which are basically English-speaking schools. And those are getting very popular in recent years because of globalization and Japan catching up to the world stage in terms of English-speaking abilities. Japan's income tax rates are a fair bit lower than in the U.S. too. Yeah, the other thing I would point to is like, if I would want to know this information, I would want to know what's the average for the country, but really depending on where you live. And I think this really works worldwide. If you live in a big city anywhere in the world, it's going to be harder because your cost of living is going to be more, because rent is the highest part of cost of living aside from food. Well, food is like second, right? Usually. Then maybe transportation and other stuff. And if you live in a big city, it's going to be more expensive to live there, but you also might make more money. So it's so weird to say like, oh, English I just don't like how he approaches this. Do all teachers make 25K or just English teachers? That's another thing that's interesting. So first of all, I don't know where he got this 25K. It might be from... Let me show you guys. Well, it's because... Okay, so Japan... JET program. That's what I was on. The JET program. This is a Japanese government-sponsored program, English teaching program. So the salary the first year is approximately 3.3 million yen, which is about 30 something, like 31 it depends because of the conversion rate. But you could just do divided by 100. Yen to USD. Let's see what the conversion rate is. It's about 30K. This is, and then it goes up. And year 4, year 5, you make about almost 40K. Maybe like 37K or something. I don't know where he got those numbers from. Obviously, you don't only work on JET program. Another interesting thing, if you want to teach English in other countries, this program is one of the best ones, pay-wise, and they help you out with certain things. Korea, I think, is the best if you want to teach English abroad. And most countries, you basically can't make much, and there is no government-sponsored thing. Yeah, I don't know where he got that number 25K, and I don't know why he doesn't bring up cost of living at all. I think that's very weird. In Argentina, the bigger the city, the cheaper the rent? Really? That's something I did not expect. I know in Tokyo it's expensive. I know New York is obviously expensive. I assume London is expensive. That's interesting. So maybe I'm wrong on that. I think... See you, Diego. Sorry. I think it's his experience because he started off in the countryside of Japan, so of course the salary would be much less as an English teacher since there is less of a demand. Actually, no, because with the JET program, you get that salary, pretty much that salary, no matter where you're going to be, because that's like government funded thing. But that aside, assuming that he didn't go with the JET program, your salary might be lower. Oh, you're saying that's maybe how he got the number 25K. Yeah, that could be. It could have been through some other program, but his cost of living would be lower too, which I wish they kind of said. Of course, since there's. Oh yeah, and I was gonna say it's not necessarily less of a demand. The reason salary might be lower is just the government in that area literally just cannot provide the funds. They don't have enough money to give. Actually, the demand might be higher in countryside places because those places don't have access to the resources for learning English. Tokyo, it's very easy for people to learn English. The resources are all there. So it's not necessarily demand. It's because the supply of funds from the governments, the state government or local government, to give to like me, like foreign instructors isn't as much. Would be my guess. I wish I could teach English abroad. Yeah. Bigger cities being less expensive actually makes more sense in an optimal society due to a bunch of increased costs with suburban sprawl. But because big cities tend to be rare, there's a lot more demand among other things in a bunch of countries. Yeah, my understanding is that the amount of people moving into big cities trends upward because there's more opportunities there and stuff. So if you have a higher demand for living somewhere, then the prices will increase. That was my understanding. In Argentina, it could be different. I don't know. Also, with COVID, it could be different because with COVID, people move to teaching online. So if you're teaching online, then you don't necessarily need to live in that area, right? Or like doing work online. You don't need to go to the office. So that could have resulted in people moving and still keeping the same job. I don't know, but I'd have to look into that personally. But if I want to apply, I need knowledge of Japanese and a degree, I think. If you want to teach English in Japan, you don't need to know knowledge of Japanese. You need to have some sort of... You do need to have a bachelor's degree, though. And having knowledge of Japanese helps, but it's not necessary, which is weird.
Hate living in Japan. The differences in work culture and relationships at the office.
This is also a very interesting thing, but...
Going back to our cultural iceberg, this is the stuff below the water. Things like office politics, relationships with your coworkers, the expectations that they have on you at work, and so many other different factors that are very, very different from what you're used to back home. Japanese societal hierarchy also plays a huge role in the workplace, and it's really important for you to be not only respectful,
requirements of my country. Ah, okay.
But be willing to go above and
I'm saying for
beyond
the JET program you don't need to, but
and of course,
maybe for that you
workplace
do.
bullying does exist in Japan, so if you ever find yourself being treated unfairly, don't be surprised if you're told to just gaman, do your best through this whole situation.
Like this is also very interesting. This is one aspect of Japanese culture that I actually respect and desire or like more in a bit of a way versus America. and this is a bit general, but because I don't have so much experience, and also I can't speak to working in so many different locations in the country versus that country, but I actually liked the fact that when I was at work, I did work. And when I didn't have work to do, I made work for myself to do. Like, I liked that. But that's because I liked my job. But I liked that aspect. I liked that kind of feeling, that environment of people around me always kind of doing their job because that's what we were there to do. It wasn't... Also, I was also in a smaller city, so it was probably more lax than bigger cities. My assumption would be that it depends where you are again. 21? Oh, the TikTok counter. Austin, Texas is the perfect example of the city living being costly. Austin was very affordable 5 to 10 years ago. Now the city... I have heard that... I actually know just from watching streamers that a lot of streamers moved to Texas because I think there are no state income taxes and it's just cheaper to live there than Cali. So they're building, if you build community there, that's where people gravitate towards and towards opportunities and stuff. And with streaming, you just need the internet and friends. So now the city's climbing up to New York standards because of people moving there for jobs. That's correct. Yeah. I also know that a lot of people were moving to Florida and moving out of New York. I think people moved back into New York because of the opportunities here, because of COVID. Obviously, demographics change and stuff. But yeah, supply and demand factor in for cost of living and stuff. Definitely, yeah.
And feeling isolated is another really big thing.
I feel like in most places, and this is from personal experience and from others I've spoken to, people don't feel too isolated because everyone gravitates towards other foreigners. So I hung out with a lot of other foreigners. I never felt lonely, even though I lived alone, because honestly, it felt good to go back home and just be alone because I would spend a lot of time with people. That being said, I did meet people who literally lived on a tiny island in Japan where they had to take a ferry to go to the mainland just to get groceries. Those people definitely felt lonely. They had no other English-speaking people nearby them, but at the same time, their relationships with their neighbors was much stronger. I lived a city life. My neighbors literally didn't want to know me, and I didn't really care too much about knowing them. Even to know each other. If I was going towards the elevator and a person was coming into my apartment, they would take the stairs. And I saw this all the time with other people too, so it wasn't just because I'm a foreigner. And I had friends who lived in the countryside where they knew their neighbors brought them fruits and stuff and vegetables, but obviously that's different because they don't know English well and you could feel lonely. It depends where you live. Like, it's very dependent on many factors. It's a weird thing
that you're going to hate in Japan. Now, most people move out of that honeymoon phase way quicker than they can actually establish a good, solid friend group. And I'm not just talking about occasional acquaintances that you see from time to time and you don't mind chatting to every now and then. I'm talking about people that you can really trust. Friends that not only share the same interests and culture as you, but friends who you can really open yourself up to. But even if you are able to establish those kinds of friendships, not a lot of them have plans to live there for as long as you.
True. That is very
true
as well.
So it may be entirely possible that your new best friend was already planning to move to Thailand 6 months after you got here.
That is that is very true. At least if you go there like for an English teaching job, throughout the years, what sucks is not only friends you make outside of work. Like, I have very close friends that I've made outside of work will move on with their lives and move out of Japan. But even coworkers you have inside of work will be forced to move to a different school. So that's one of the reasons why I considered coming back home too, because every year things were changing and I like change, but it was changing so much so that it was hard to create something stable. I think that's understandable. It seems like you're saying that whether you like Japan or not depends on your ability to adapt and take advantages of your opportunities around you. I definitely think that, but I also think it depends on how your personality and how you basically confront these different things. Not only that though, that the things around you is completely like the challenges you'll encounter are also dependent on where you live and the different environments in Japan. Like, it's not, if you live in Tokyo, it's very different than living in Fukuoka, which is very different than living in Kumamoto, which is where I lived. And even in Kumamoto, where I lived, the experience of living in a city is very different than living in the countryside. And even if you lived in the city, you could compare someone living in the city who has 1 school to teach at versus 5 schools to teach at. And depending on your personality and how you adapt to different things, it just depends. Did being forced to move to a different school include like entirely different locations, or was it like a district thing? Sorry, we'll finish this video soon and then we'll take more links. My bad, Miles, and everyone else. Did being forces to move to a different school include like entirely different locations, or was it like a district thing? From my understanding, I don't remember too much, but I remember asking coworkers this. They basically, the Board of Education tries to have teachers in a certain location for X amount of years and kind of redirects them in different places. I have heard of teachers literally being forced to move, like literally like move from one area to a different area just because they were forced to teach at a different school. So for Japanese teachers, it's actually pretty shitty. And Japanese, and yeah, it's a beat for you to freestyle too. Okay.
It just becomes tired to go through the same motions over and over and over, rebuilding a friendship, only to see that person eventually leave. So as the stress piles up and the loneliness sets in...
I think that's true for a lot of people, this part. It's like the truest thing he said so far. But even this... like, if you're the type of person who wants to be just in Japanese culture, and you don't make any foreigner friends, and you make Japanese friends, and they live in that city for the rest of their lives, like, this doesn't apply to you, you know?
Really start to hit the lows of culture shock. And this is a bad place to be in because you just become so bitter and angry and blaming Japan and the country when in many cases the country and the culture of Japan have nothing to do with whatever you're angry at. But thankfully there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's called the adjustment phase. If you don't give up,
Ooh.
you will start to adjust.
I've been to
whatever the situation.
I've been to South Korea. South Korea, do you have any lifelong friends that you still talk to from Japan? So, yes, but friends that are Japanese, not really. I was starting to build bonds with Japanese people because it takes me a while to kind of be comfortable in certain situations. So my Japanese was never like amazing, so it took me a while to be comfortable with coworkers and stuff. I think if I stayed there another year or two, I would have had lifelong Japanese friends, but I have foreigner friends. I've visited South Korea twice, and it is really cool. Everyone's haircuts look similar. I mean, from what I've seen, they all get a similar type of haircut. Fashion is a big thing in Korea. Yeah, Korea was interesting. They don't have to be Japanese. Friends are friends. I wasn't sure if foreigners left so much you couldn't really get to know them. Oh, no. It's like you might spend a year or 2 or even 3 years with 3 different close friends, but then they move on. Maybe they teach English somewhere else. Because most people who teach English in Japan, it's a temporary thing in their life. I don't know why. I just love the Korean culture. I mean, that's cool. I don't know why. I just love Japanese culture, but I'm in America now. And I hate K-pop. Just love the traditional culture. That's kind of cooler, in my opinion. I actually considered living in Korea for a while, too. I think, yeah. I mean, it's never too late. I might end up going there. So if you ever end up moving, I'll see you there, Miles.
Situation is that you're in. Whether
I got
that's
a pee-pee.
being more comfortable on relying on others to help you out, figuring out some solution to something annoying that's happening in your life, or maybe even getting your language skills up to a point where you can comfortably say things that you want to say. You'll eventually start to find some solutions. These little wins.
I will say also that it was harder to get closer to my coworkers because at a certain point I finally got my Japanese at a high enough level that I could speak with my coworkers and understand what they're saying and like actually talk about stuff. Like people talk about stuff, right? They're people. They talk about the kid that's like being annoying. They talk about like what happened at yesterday's event. That like it's fun. It's cool to interact in Japanese. But what sucks is that I had 4 schools. I went to 4 schools a week. So yeah, we would talk about this one kid, but then I would come back to that school a week later and I don't know what happened in that week span of time, you know? So it was very hard to get closer to Japanese coworkers because of that. I forgot that was a big thing. Okay, Yesik. Imagine getting close to anyone in a foreign country is very difficult. Yeah, getting close to people who are in a similar position to you, I think is much easier. So it was very easy for me to get close to other teachers, other English teachers who came from abroad, because we were able to share stories and, you know, we understood, like we could talk about, oh my God, that it's so annoying that this happens sometimes, like when Japanese people like just don't want to, you know, like we could kind of share stuff like that. But with the natives of the place, I think it's harder unless you force yourself to kind of stray away from foreigners and concentrate on surrounding yourself with them. And I knew of people who did that. I knew a guy who literally went out of their way to not talk to us at all, just so he could put himself in the situation, or like to be with Japanese people all the time. I mean, like the native people, yeah. It is. You need to make an effort to do that, for sure.
Make things a lot easier on yourself. And then eventually you're going to hit the final phase of culture shock, and that is the acceptance phase. You're finally going to be able to stop putting your own expectations onto Japanese society and trying to control things around you, and instead learning how to control yourself into better fitting into how Japanese society works.
Yeah.
Of course, there are still going to be things that will bother you from time to time, but you're going to be in a much better mental
11 minutes into the video, they would say something good about living in Japan.
Space to deal with those problems. You're going to be
or like how
more
to
comfortable
deal
with
with
your
it.
day-to-day life, and it's not going to feel like every day is a struggle.
So what are some culture shock tips you would give to someone who is planning to move to Japan?
No matter who you are going to go through the phases of culture shock. And when you do eventually go through the frustration phase, always remember that if you can stick through it, you're eventually going to go through the acceptance phase, and then things will become much better after that.
I don't know if it's that clear. There's probably up and down over the years, right? But
eventually you're going to go through
a nice ending, I guess.
Phase, and then things will become much better after that. Try to learn the language as quickly as you can, because I would say that probably...
Yeah, learning the language is... Even more specifically, practice the language. It took me so long to gain the confidence to practice Japanese with other Japanese people. You're going to make mistakes a billion times. Like, almost every time you speak in Japanese, you will make a mistake. Unless you're just that good with languages. Because, Jesus Christ, it's a hard language. And you know what? What's the point of language? Communication. At least spoken language. You know, that's the point. So if you're living somewhere abroad, you need to practice speaking. I hope he talks about that. I don't know. You can stop it here. They're going to turn it into an advertisement. Oh, okay. I can barely make new friends in my own country, let alone somewhere with a language barrier. Yeah, I can say I was very lucky that in high school, I ended up sticking with a group of friends that I still have today. Not like I'm so old, but yeah, I think it can be hard sometimes to make friends, for sure. Do you think it's best to practice with staff? So if you go to a restaurant, you speak Japanese with the waiter? I think that could be a little cringe sometimes. A lot of times you'll have places where you could practice. If you want to start slow, you could do what I did. You could go to italki.com, pay like $7 an hour to someone once a week or something to practice your Japanese. There's also free things. If you live in a biggish city, you could probably find other people to speak to. So in New York, if I really wanted to, I could go and do something called like language exchange, where you teach them and speak English with them, and they teach you and speak Japanese with you, and that's free, and that's kind of cool, and you can make friends like that. A lot of places will also have an international center. My city had an international center where I went quite often, like once a week at a certain point of time, to just speak with Japanese people. And that was great. I think doing it with a waiter is a bit weird because that's not really the time and place. But if it just comes out naturally, it's great. I will say one thing that improved my Japanese reading to an insane level was karaoke. Karaokeing. Listen, when you're drunk and everyone is drunk, if you drink, you don't even need to be drunk. But if you're surrounded with people who are drunk in Japan, you're going to be in bars, you're going to be in karaoke spots, and that's just, you could learn like that. I learned how to read just by reading the subtitles of Japanese songs, to be honest. I'm going to go pee and we'll be right back. We'll be right back. Sorry, I really gotta pee.
Monkey do bad. Monkey do very bad.
Monkey do okay. Monkey do pretty okay. I guess.
Oh my god, I had so much pee-pee. Anyway. I will say though, practicing with a waiter is like you'll be able to get some practice in and it'll feel cool, but it's not gonna supplement like real conversation. So I'm in charge now, false. Okay. Anyway. Okay, let's look at this video now. I didn't really like the video, but it was an interesting video to look at. Oh my god. After this video, we'll look at maybe Miles's video, since Miles just popped in, you know. Pizza. Yo, pizza's mad good. Pizza's so good. No. Oh, okay, that's good. Extra cheese. Polyglots, like speaking multiple languages, yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. But yeah, I want everyone to have a chance to like send a video, so maybe after Miles we'll go back to your video, Yasik. Yeah, I talk a lot, Aqua, so I'll always have something to say. Yeah. As long as it was you guys found it interesting, then I'm good. Yeah. Nathan's 22 TikToks? I don't know. That's why I like when you guys send it on Discord beforehand, because then it's like already all there, but sorry. When we finish a video, I'll look at whatever link is there and I'll click on it. Like first come, first serve type of thing. But I'm not gonna scroll all the way up to like other videos. Thanks for watching, yeah. Amugas. I wonder how popular. It almost has 1 million views. I had like 100,000 last time, I think. That Yesik wanted me to watch. Jasik. Gray. It looks the same so far. Like just different levels. Oh. There's a store in Among Us. Of course, they have to make more money, right? That was very smart for them to. It seems like a lot of new games are adding battle royale, or what's it called, tier systems, like in Fortnite or whatever. Like season resets. I forgot what the exact word is. Maybe tier systems. Maybe you guys could tell me. But it's such a smart idea. What I think. Thanks for rushing mine too. I didn't think it would be possible. I talk too much. Beans buy items, bundles, cosmic cubes. But with the real money. Pods unlock cube contents. XP gives you a big number. That was funny. Yes! Oh my god, I love how self-aware they are in presenting this. That's great. This is just to make money, isn't it? Yep, we live in a capitalistic society. Money for more update servers costs. And, oh my god, it's so fast. Boba. A new game. And more stuff for you. And more money for us. So did they make any big updates to the actual game? Among Us Battle Pass. Yeah. I'm thinking about Battle Pass, I think. Like, these are all... let's be honest, these updates don't really matter to the core game, right? But I think you did tell me they added roles and stuff, right? Okay, so this looks like a new role. Wait for it. But I can't get anyone to play with me. You want to play Among Us? Okay, so they did add roles. It's a good trailer video. Good demonstration. Crap ton of new roles. Ah. Scientist. Access vitals at any time. Oh, that's cool. Shapeshifter. Disguise yourself? What the hell? That's... Yo, the mind games are so hard now, no? Engineer. Can use the vents. What? I feel like this is gonna get so confusing for dumbos like me. That's a good video. Savior? What the hell? God? Guardian Angel? Protect the remaining crew? Oh, damn! That's very smart to make people who are dead actually be able to do something. That's cool, cool update. Maybe we'll make Sundays an Among Us thing or something. Maybe. Miles, what was your video? I know I said I wouldn't scroll up, but I scrolled up. Oh yeah, you wanted me to rap. I'm an amazing rapper. Oh, wait, this is probably not copyright free. I'm gonna put it on my non-copyright free tab. I'm not even joking, that's a thing. I don't know if Miles, if you're still here, but yeah. Stupid commercial. It's pretty insane. We should play it once in a while since we have more variety now. Yeah, maybe. I mean, Pokemon is still an everyday thing. Except Saturdays. So, you definitely drank the magic juice. You now love Among Us now? No, I don't love it now, but it looks like it could be interesting to play a few times. Watch my video about polyglots after this. Okay. What is this? I'm a rapper. I can rap. I don't give a crap. I can rap. This is very cringe. I don't know. This is just a song, bro. This is not a video to react to. Sorry, I'm not a good rapper. I can't help you there. Okay, polyglutes. Hey, why'd you send the same video, bro? Bro.
So the elephant in the room here is, can a YouTube polyglot, God I hate that term, can a YouTube polyglot make a video about YouTube polyglots live?
Are most YouTube polyglots lying? Oh, okay. I read that incorrectly. I mean, we wouldn't argue that much about not being the imposter. I guess so.
Lying, and would you believe me if I did? Well, I'm gonna try. First of all, though, a bit of housekeeping.
What's your other video you wanted to send, Aqua? Actually, let me think. This is 3 hours. Blah, 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 blah. What time is it? Yeah, we'll go a little further, I guess.
This is a controversial video, and I almost didn't make it. I'm still not sure if making this video is the right thing to do, but I get questions on this all the time, so I wanted to address it, and I wanted to do it in my way. So there are going to be 3 things housekeeping if you like in this video. First of all, I'm not going to mention any names. Those of you who are paying for...
Bro, I'm sorry. But he starts the video.
The elephant in the room here is
literally.
YouTube polyglot. God, I hate that term. Can a YouTube polyglot make a video about YouTube polyglot?
He literally says, "I'm not gonna name any names," and then he shows like 5 people. But I mean, that's not naming names, but it kind of is.
First of all, I'm not going to mention any names. Those of you who are baying for blood, you're not going to get that here. Secondly, this is going to be a constructive video. Most videos I find on this topic are not really very helpful. So my hope is that my ideas here are going to give you a new constructive take on this whole world. And thirdly, I'm making this for a very specific kind of person. I'm making this video for you, someone who's trying to learn a new language and is looking for a way to kind of navigate this field of YouTube and the polyglots and language learners that you see here. We're not going to play a game of who is the best polyglot. Those are the 3 rules. As you'll see, a bit of a spoiler alert, this is going to be a fairly positive take on the whole thing, but there is one thing in particular which does make my blood boil somewhat, and you'll hear about that.
I'm going to assume he's going to talk about how some YouTube polyglots say they can speak so many languages, but then when you hear them speak it, they're not really fluent on it, but they still consider themselves a polyglot. That's my assumption. I can feel the bromance. I'm the best polyglot. I don't know about that, but
at the end of the so what exactly is a polyglot? We should define it, right? It seems like a...
You know what's funny, actually? I'm sorry for pausing. I feel like a lot of immigrants are polyglots, but they don't talk about it, which is actually pretty cool. Like, my grandparents are pretty much polyglots, but they don't say that, and they don't care to say that. And I kind of respect that, you know what I mean?
A good place to start.
Like, they were forced to just learn different languages, and that's so cool. Well, I mean, it's cool that they know those languages.
Given that it's the topic of this video. I personally really dislike the word polyglot. It seems to bring with it an awful lot of baggage, especially in the English language. I'd never used this word in my life until I discovered YouTube. I've been learning languages for like 15 years or so, and then one day I discovered the word of language learning on YouTube. And
yeah, I feel like when someone says they're a polyglot, it's like, oh, so sophisticated. But I don't know. I have a friend who claims to speak 15 or something, but he's just able to say basic stuff in some of them. Yeah. It's like even when people say, oh, you can speak Japanese, and I'm like, a little bit, because no, I can't, like, I can speak it, but I'm not great at it, you know?
All these people
it's weird to say that I can speak it.
Well, that's interesting. I kind of got used to it over time, I guess, but I do feel this word brings with it a lot of baggage, and there's so much airtime spent discussing if you're a polyglot or not, and I think it's a royal waste of time. There are people that say, well, you're not a true polyglot unless you speak, I don't know, 5 languages to a C2 level, you know, native.
For anyone who doesn't know, there's different levels for languages where you could take tests corresponding to levels to see how high you are, how fluent you are in a language. But even then, it doesn't really mean mastery, because it's just like in school, you could have good test taking skills, but communication is a huge part of language. So if you can't communicate with other people, are you actually fluent in that language? As an example, a lot of people have, there's a Japanese proficiency language test, and a lot of people have high proficiency from that test, but can barely speak the language because they don't speak it. So, yeah.
Level. I really don't have strong feelings about this. I think
he's probably going to mention that.
I don't think it matters all that much. I come from a background of learning languages to make my life better, so I'm very resistant to labels. But it is relevant to know, I think, whether or not you can be considered to speak a language. And personally, I have a litmus test for whether you can speak a language or not, and I call it the pub test, and it is as follows.
Ooh,
if we go to a pub,
I like that.
sit down and speak in another language with a drink, and we can enjoy the conversation without either of us kind of bending our language to cater to the other person too much, then I think you can say that you speak that language. And so for me, I think if you were to press me at what a polyglot is, I'd say if you...
That's, yeah. How do you define being fluent in a language? I consider myself being fluent in English, but that's so easy to consider myself being fluent in, right? It gets very tricky. Oh my god, Sneeder. What's up? Long time no see. When people ask me how language I speak, I just say Spanish, English, French, intermediate, and Chinese elementary. See, I'm not basic in Chinese anymore after 5 years. To be honest, I've been studying Chinese for the past 15 days-ish, so I want to continue studying it until the end of the year. Hopefully my Chinese level will be better. Yeah. That sounds accurate from what I know of you, Jessica. And I think that's a good way of describing your fluency level.
You can speak.
Hey, Joe. What's up? I was actually thinking of you the other day because I haven't done music in a while on stream, and I was like, Joe would like music on stream.
3 foreign languages at a pub test level, then in my book, you can call yourself a polyglot. And for the purposes of this video, that's the definition we're going to use. I understand if you disagree with me, I just don't really care. By the way, the content of this video, all the topics we're going to cover come from a post I made in the community tab of my YouTube channel. We've got over 200 responses to this. And so if you want to join in these conversations like this and contribute to future videos, then make sure to subscribe to the channel, because I often ask my audience what they think about videos I'm about to make.
Hey, IQ went up.
So moving on from the question of whether you're actually allowed to call yourself a polyglot or not, one of the most common criticisms you see of YouTubers is that you're not fluent. You say you're such and such a level, you say that you speak Spanish, you're fluent in Spanish, but you're
I mean, as long as you're able to communicate with people, you're fluent. If communication is your goal, sure. I guess. It becomes a bit wonky though, right? Because like I can communicate in Japanese with people, but if we talk about the meaning of life, even that I could kind of do, but if we talk about like science and stuff, I can't really talk about much, right? So it gets a bit tricky. And then also reading wise, if your goal is to, but I guess fluency revolves around speaking and communication. I don't know. Yo, let's go. Thank you, Aqua. How are you, Ping? I'm doing great. How are you doing? You seem excited. You guys came in very excited.
It's arguments over the level that someone is, and this is a criticism that is probably the most common criticism.
But it doesn't really matter, this discussion. Kind of like what he said. It doesn't. Who cares? Are you really fluent? Who cares? Like, what is your goal? Did you achieve your goal? That's it. If your goal, one of my friends, he's learning Japanese. His goal is to read a famous Japanese author in Japanese. So, it depends what your goal is. You can speak to a child in perfect Japanese, simple convo. Yo, kids are harder to speak to than adults. And I didn't realize this, and I felt so stupid. But then I came back home, and I started talking to kids, and I realized that kids are just unintelligible. Sometimes I would be like, what? Like, I would be in a class, and a Japanese kid would say something, and I'm like, what? I don't really understand. And then the teacher would be like, don't worry, I don't understand either. And that would make me feel better. It's like the way kids communicate is a bit weird, But I don't have perfect Japanese at all, in any sense of the word. My grammar's all over the place a lot, but I can get my point across. You need to understand and communicate in most topics. I can't talk about science and politics because they're not of my interest. Right, but like, what does most topics mean, right? Because science and politics are a huge part of most topics, right? math, social studies, history. That's why and the more you understand about anything, really, right? The more you realize that you don't understand much of that thing. They might not be of your interest, but you could speak about science and politics in Spanish or in English, possibly, right? So you complicate your life. No, I think that's just how it is. No,
and I find
that's
it
just how I
very
think of it.
unfortunate that this is the kind of thing that people focus on. I think the reason I feel this way is that I come from a country and a culture where no one learns foreign languages. You know, I started learning languages when I was 19 years old. French was my first language, and I was the only person amongst my entire friendship group that took the time to learn or even had any interest in learning languages. And I remember, like, when I would, after learning my first couple of languages, whenever I came across someone, especially a British person, who also learned languages, it would be like I'm meeting a soulmate, you know. And I would respect so much anyone that had taken the time to learn a language. And then afterwards, later...
I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, if you go through something and someone else goes through a similar thing, you can respect that thing because you understand what they've gone through, right? I mean...
During my life when I went off and used my languages all around the world, like the idea that you should be criticized for the level that you speak a language is just harmful and toxic.
But I don't think most people criticize people for the level of their language. I don't think anyone really does this, except like a radical few. Like, if you're learning a new language, I think most people are supportive, especially people who are native speakers of that language. You know, if your first language is English and you're learning Spanish, or let's say you're learning, French, and you speak to French people in French, they would appreciate that. Like, when I spoke to Japanese people in Japanese, they would like, no? I don't know if that's a worldwide thing, but I would assume that's just a human thing. Because most people understand that it's hard to learn a language, especially... you know, your native language. You know, if a foreigner comes to your country and learns your language, it's like, whoa, good job, bro. No? I think the definition of fluency is contextual based on the intended application of the language. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to say, but I'm not entirely sure if that's accurate. Like, because if you could read a book in Japanese but not speak it very well, which is entirely possible, would you be considered fluent? Maybe in your reading comprehension? But in the language of Japanese, I don't know if you would be considered fluent. And what you're trying to do, I guess, like, you're good, you've accomplished what you wanted, but I don't know if that's fluent. I can be fluent within a job title, but not within actual immersion or socialization. I went through your grandma. That's why I respect your grandpa. Never mind. What's up, darkness?
Hello there.
I went through your grandma. That's why I respect your grandpa. Oh, you respect yourself. I get it. I like that. Johan likes to study Spanish. I mean, I consider myself to be fluent in English. I mean, from what I've seen, you seem to be fluent in English. You didn't... Why'd you delete the message? It's fine. You didn't need to delete the message. I think you're fluent in English. I've heard you speak in English, and I mean, you type in chat, so I think I would assume those are the two things for judging one's fluency. I don't know. It was a weird thing to... Yeah, I got that. I thought the joke was that you had sex with my grandma, but that you were my grandpa too. Yes, like, your job is not to ban people's free speech, okay? Unless I say it's a dictatorship, okay? Don't do that, yes, please.
Toxic. And my starting point is always that anyone that speaks a language, anyone that puts effort into learning a language is a good thing, and we should not be criticizing people over their level. This seems to be something that is purely a YouTube phenomenon. You don't see this out in the real world. It's only on YouTube where you'll have someone who's like even highly fluent in a language, but they'll still get comments saying, "Oh well, you know, you're not C2." I don't.
Isn't that the internet in general? You don't see these things in the real world much, but you see it on the internet, so it kind of makes it seem like it's a big thing. Like, so much, right? Like, you don't go out on the street. Just so much of Twitter is that. But I don't make jokes often. I need the opportunities. No, that was fine joke. I don't know why Yesek did that. That is shame, bro. Shameful for you, Yesek.
Rings a bell. Shame.
He did a bad modding. He did bad modding. That's first warning, Yesek. Come on. I don't... If I have a problem with something, I would say that I have a problem with it before any chat has to be deleted or anyone getting banned or timed out. That's not necessary. TTS is always echoing? Wait, really? Thank you for telling me that. That's... I don't know why. I'll look into that. It shouldn't be echoing. Does it echo for everyone? Message delete. Well, I could see if you delete it or not. All Games of Thrones fans should get this reference. Yes, I do get it.
I don't think you'd be able to talk about nuclear physics or whatever. It's really unfortunate. Yes, it's true that the Dunning-Kruger effect exists. People think they are higher than they are in a language. Yes, people exaggerate the language.
Yeah, people with little experience overestimate their abilities, while more highly experienced people underestimate their abilities. This is kind of what I was saying before, that the more you learn a language, the more you realize that you don't know much of it. And this kind of applies to life. I think there was a study that kind of showed that people who were smarter on average were less confident, and people who are more confident are like dumber, or like IQ-wise, which would kind of coincide with the Dunning-Kruger effect. But it has been a while. All your stuff that speaks plays twice. It has been for a while. Really? Wait, all the sound effects too? Let me see something real quick. No, it should be playing once. I'm looking at my audio sources. It should be playing once. It's funny because he's literally judging YouTubers who claim to be polyglots online, proving his point that people are overly critical online. Oh, yeah. No, not sound effects. Only monkeys. Oh, when a monkey is played, it's...
Monkey do good. Monkey do very good.
Ah, I see that. I saw it that time. Sorry, I'm fixing it. I think I know what it is. Thank you. Don't worry, guys. I'm still here. Not like anyone was worried, but let me see.
Monkey do bad. Monkey do very bad.
Ugh, it does. I'll fix it for next time. Thank you, guys. Thank you for telling me.
It's like, so be it. Like, who really cares? And you know what the conclusion I've come to from investigating this is that actually...
It's like such a useless video. He literally says not many people do. Well, it's not useless because I guess YouTubers do it. I guess he's saying, so that's why he's talking about it.
Most people don't care. The internet's a funny place.
Yeah, most people don't care.
Who shouts loudest gets the most attention. And all...
Yeah, I said this earlier. I mean, well, I said this yesterday, I think. But yeah, I agree with this.
Often people who criticize polyglots online, they will get the most airtime because people like they like a bit of a fight, But I've also noticed that more often than not, people are inspired by watching videos of people learning language, even if they exaggerate about their level, even if they are not as fluent as they say.
People are.
It's just that the people who are inspired about this aren't moved to leave gushing comments on YouTube about that. So yes, there are shenanigans about.
Some people do. I'm kind of curious now. How many people talking about polyglots? Overly confident people don't know much. They don't have the knowledge to realize their intelligence is limited. It's a hilarious paradox. Yeah, I think it was proven through studies that that's a thing, which is interesting, I think. Which also, another thing I thought was very interesting that I've heard a while ago was that people who get good grades in school usually end up being successful. People who get the best grades in school usually end up being pretty successful. But people who do really bad in school, not all of them, a small tiny percentage of them are the people that do the best in life. Or are the most successful financially, at least. And you might be asking, what? Why? And the reasoning, I think, is that when you do well in school, you're probably going to be the type of person that takes less risks and kind of goes by the book and does everything right and stuff like that. So you'll be doing good at your job, you'll follow instructions, you'll make your way up the ladder, XYZ, you know, it follows. But then if you don't follow the crowd and you don't get as good grades and stuff like that, and you're more willing to take risks, and you take those risks, then in life, you know, if you start a business, you're going to have to take a lot of risks. And if you take those risks and you succeed, then, you know, higher risk equals higher reward, that type of thing. So, yeah. But anyway, I'm kind of curious. Polyglots. Did you watch Game of Thrones? Yep. Honestly, so this is Polyglots, right? And this guy was talking. Let's see the comments. How my mom feels after saying gracias to the Japanese waiter. So this is a joke. If I knew all the languages, I'd post a meme in each language. Joke. Finally, we're there, pound it. So no one is really saying anything crazy, right? This is talking about his own experience or her own experience. Katarina, probably her. There's nothing here really saying anything bad or good. Like, oh, I'm influenced to speak language. They're literally just commenting on the video. This is one video. It's not a good representation of what the guy's saying, but is this even a problem? Or he just thought of a good YouTube title to make? I was second place at high school and I'm still doing well at university. I took risks. I changed my major because I wasn't doing it well. I mean, you're still young. Taking risks in life versus taking risks. I don't know. Like, if in 10 years you ended up running 4 businesses and they were all unsuccessful, but then the 5th business ended up being successful, versus if you know, like, it's hard to say when you're still young, I think. It's not even true, but I feel like a lot of people who are successful in that way market it as if it's an inevitable thing and that people shouldn't even bother with school. Maybe. I know that from personally listening to different people talking about their experiences, from my personal experience of listening to other people's experiences, it seems like a lot of highly financially successful people who didn't do well in school still push school, but not very successfully. They don't really explain what I was just talking about, or maybe some of them do, I don't know. But from what I've heard, it's more of, I did bad in school, but school wasn't a thing for me, and now I'm very successful, but you should go to school. But if you heard that, like, if you're a person in school, you would be like, well, I want your life, I don't want to go to school, right? Like, it's not there's no good reasoning, I guess. But anyway, funny GOT video, I really liked it though. Okay, you said we're okay with finishing this video, so I'll just exit out. Kind of interesting, but what the hell? Why is it pressing play and pause at the same time? Your video is not working, bro. I'm sorry. Or I don't know.
Game of Thrones is the most popular show on
Spoiler alert.
television, but with so many characters, plots, and locations, it can.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, oh, cryptocurrency. Ooh, stocks. Ooh, I don't need to go to school. Like, these are very exceptional cases. Majority of people, you know, ooh, I want to start up my own business. Like, most of these things, you know, like, going to school will result in success versus not going to school in most cases. And, like, XYZ, you know, like, it's, yeah. Love spoilers? Oh, okay. If you haven't watched this, just close your eyes for 2 minutes. I won't pause. I'll try not to pause.
Now there's help with Game of Phones. For just $2.99 a minute, our certified
This looks like an SNL skit.
answers you can trust.
Game of Phones.
Who poisoned King Joffrey?
No one did. It turned out to be a bad clam. Remember, you have to tap the shells to make sure they're alive before you cook them. It's clam 101.
No question is too awkward.
I have a crush on my brother. What should I do?
Nothing. It's illegal and immoral to act on those feelings. On the other hand,
Is it illegal? Oh, I really don't want this in my search history. Close his ears. Oh, sorry. Wait. I paused. I'll look it up while it plays.
hot, go for it. How can I help you?
Too personal.
Game of Phones, how can I help you?
I think I have grayscale.
I know that
Are
actor.
your genitals swollen and tender?
That's Jimmy Kimmel.
That's chlamydia. Game of Phones, how can I help you?
Too intricate.
Hello, Game of Phones.
I wanted to ask Maisie Williams how the whole face swapping thing works.
Okay, I'll just go and get her.
Okay, I'll hold.
Jesus. She looks so familiar. Who is that?
Yeah, so first you start off by
Is she from Game of Thrones? Pay attention to the 3 pics in the background.
Can I have your HBO Go password?
What pic? When Cersei speaks?
Is it Hodor?
Our friendly operators are here.
It is illegal.
Game of Phones. How can I help? I just wanted to say that I hate you, you are sick, and you are just awful.
You know I have caller ID. See you soon, Gary. Game of Phones, how can I help?
Oh, they are actors. Oh, they are the actors from it. I just realized that. Oh, it was Arya. It was Arya. That's right.
Young Greyjoy. Davos had his fingertips cut off. His penis is fine.
I'm pretty sure he got his penis cut off.
My penis is perfect. You want me to show you my penis? What?
Yeah, I don't know the logistics of what explicitly is prohibited as well.
How can I help you?
A small but diabolical clause in their HBO contract requires them to ban our phone banks and cut George R.R. Martin's lawn.
That looks so real.
White walk, white run to your phone today to call Game of Phones. $2.99 per minute or $5.99 per Raven.
Oh, thanks.
Call today.
No, not Dothraki.
I paid attention to the pictures. Oh, okay. Game of Thrones is over. You guys can go. There's a second part. It's after it. Wait, did I miss the second part? I lied. Oh, no. I didn't miss it. Okay. Alright, guys. 3.5 hours. I think I'll end the stream there. This is actually like a really good stream. It was really fun. Informative and stuff. Thanks for watching, guys. And, yeah. I'll see y'all Monday for the next Pokemon game we're going to play. I'm not sure if it's going to be a Nuzlocke yet. It kind of will be, but it won't be a shiny luck like I thought. But it should be pretty cool. You learned nothing? I'm sorry about that. You're welcome, yeah. Aww. It's part 222. It says next video. Alright, sorry Darkness, I know you only came in recently. But good night, y'all. And send your videos for next week if you'd like to see it featured in an order instead of, randomly. The real learning was the friends we made along the way. See you Monday. Good night. Or good day. Wait, I have a button. Face off.